Yeah, I see it on there.
We're there?
Yeah. And I will click go live when we're ready to go live on Facebook, but we're live on YouTube now.
We're live on YouTube. Great. I think we're ready to go live on Facebook. I think we are ready.
Ba-boom.
Ba-boom. Oh, I see us. There we are. Oh, I can hear myself. I can learn to mute that so I don't have to hear myself anymore. Okay, I think we're live. It's in speaker view. I guess I should have, or it's in gallery view. I should have it in speaker view, shouldn't I?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I have changed it to that. All right. Well, welcome everybody to the Nichols Animation School in a Day, which is as a part of we're doing in conjunction with the Animation Challenge. Which, if you're not signed up for that yet, there's still like what 3 weeks left in January, so I still think plenty of time.
Lots of time.
Yeah, lots of time. I'm here today with some other Nichols staff members. We got Sandy and Elling here.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you guys doing today?
the natural awkwardness of simultaneous chat on Zoom.
Yes.
Hi, everybody. I'm the executive director of the Nickel. I will only be here for a little while, but I'm very excited about today and love the Animation Challenge. It's one of my pet favorite things that we do at the Nickel because I love animation and want more of it to happen here.
Yes.
So you are part of the solution. Thank you.
I have an special fondness for the for our Animation Challenge last year because the screening was one of the last things we did in public. It was that and a screening of My Left Breast for the last two sort of public things we did. So yeah, really excited to be having. My name is Devin Shears. I don't know if I actually said that. I'm the director of programming communications for the Nickel. Thank you so much for joining us today, and Sandy.
Hi, hello. I signed my kids up to do the Animation Challenge with me, so I'm excited to be here in a few capacities.
Yes.
So hello, everyone, and happy to be here.
So if you're like Sandy's kids and have probably never made an animated film before, this is a great place to start. We've got 3 really excellent presentations today from Angie Sutherland, Curtis Rio, and Lulu Keating, in that order. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment down in the chat on Facebook. I'll be keeping an eye on it. And I will be happy to pass that along to the presenters. So first up today we have Angie Sutherland. Angie is a pixel art artist who made her first film a couple of years ago as part of one of our challenges, not the animation challenge, but I believe, Angie, it was the sci-fi fantasy challenge, wasn't it?
Sci-fi, yeah.
Yeah, sci-fi. All right, there's no fantasy.
No fantasy involved.
No, yeah. And that film went on to play at our main festival and won the Best Emerging Filmmaker Award because I think everyone was just so blown away by it. And yeah, her style is super unique. I'm super excited to hear her speak today. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it on over to Angie.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Angie Sutherland. I'm here to talk about my experience about making a film in 2 days for the Sci-Fi Challenge. I have a little presentation here. 1 second. All right. So I have no traditional background in filmmaking, so the idea of making a film was kind of super foreign to me, like no traditional skills in that sense. Now this talk does go into some like technical computery things, but like don't be like super alarmed if you're not, really tech savvy, because this is more meant to be like inspiration to use the tools that you have to like think outside the box a little bit and, make your own film with the tools you have. That said, if there's anyone that wants to chat more about the technical side, I'll be available after, and I'll put my contact information up so you can get at me anytime. So what is this presentation all about? Well, I'm going to show you the film I made. It's about 5 minutes long. And then I'll go over the tools I used to make it and the process I went through to make this film. So I hope you find this inspirational. So who am I and why should you care? Right now I'm working as a producer and a PR manager at Pixelnuts. So we're like a small game development studio. They're based out of St. Catharines, Ontario. And yeah, we make games and stuff. I deal mostly with the organizational side and the community portion, so I don't do a whole lot of, technical things with them. I'm not a programmer or, more like a desk jockey. But
That's a useful thing, though. That's
Right.
important. That's an important part of the ecosystem, the whole thing, Like,
it is important, yeah. It's easy to get derailed in game development, I'll tell you. But
Who's not at their desk these days? Am I right?
right. So I started there though as a pixel artist last year. So I got hired to do contract with them just to make art for a little demo they were working on, and that kind of just led into my job now. But so yeah, my background, I guess, is in pixel art, which I guess if anybody doesn't know, it's like drawing at the smallest possible format. Like the smallest point on a screen is a pixel. So you can imagine like your computer screen's probably like 1920 by 1080. So that's how many pixels you see on the screen. So basically you're drawing in the very, very small and then like scaling it up. And in my spare time, I make games for fun. So I'm like a super novice programmer. I can like cobble together a few things now and again. Sometimes they even work. To date, I've worked on, over 20 games. Not all commercial, of course. A lot of them have been like hobby projects, but every year I make more and more things and I'm getting more and more experience. And luckily, those skills have gave me the tools to try to like cobble together a short film in 48 hours. Which I don't necessarily recommend, 48 hours, but like a month-long thing, that's a great motivation. So I guess without further ado, I will play this film for you guys, and then I'll talk more about it.
We're getting a lot of comments about feels in the chat.
Oh my
Aw.
god.
Elia,
So
it's so
good.
good. Yes,
So
easily
good.
one
What
of
are you
the
doing to us?
yeah, but definitely one of the best
I love this film.
one of the best challenge films we've ever had. I think it's so excellent. Anyways, yeah, but yes, lots of feels and hearts and stuff in the
Okay.
chat. Just thought I'd let you know.
Oh, bless. I don't know how to get out of it.
Oh,
Can't make it
it's just
stop.
you just hit the full screen.
No, it's just playing when I hit full screen or unfull
Weird.
screen.
Hit escape maybe.
Oh yeah,
Oh, there you go.
here
Cool.
it is. All right, where was I? All right. So yeah, I was really surprised how what a a strong reaction this film got when it played the first time at the challenge. I was totally blown away by, I guess, people's feels, you know. But yeah, it's gone on to go to a couple of festivals now. It recently won Best Screenplay at the Astra Science Fiction and Fantasy Film Festival in Australia, which is kind of exciting.
Oh wow! Congratulations.
So yeah, it's been a wild ride, that's for sure. But yeah, I guess I'll go through the steps I took to make it. And as this might lead you to believe, I started with music. So I looked for some public domain, royalty-free music. So I probably listened to 40, 50 different songs, and then I'd listen to them again if I kind of liked them, and then I'd sussed out a list of the few that kind of spoke to me that also fit a narrative, and then when I finally found a song that I was yes, this is going to be the one I'm going to use, I broke it down into little parts. So this is a false example for a 60-second theoretical song. So the first 10 seconds is your intro. You can imagine it's peaceful or whatever, and then 10 to 30 seconds it's building up and then it gets more exciting, and that's when something exciting would happen in the climax of your film, and then you're slow down, you're fading out. Finding a song that fits a typical story arc was kind of my goal, and this is how I broke it down into little sections based on where I thought the feeling changed. So yeah, again, listened to so many songs. I'm pretty sure I drove the person I was living with just crazy that weekend, listening to weird game music and strange, who knows what, just all kinds of things. But the one I did chose was mostly because of the windy intro that it had, and that inspired me. Well, it really reminded me of some fun fact I'd heard about Mars one time, having super strong winds, 200 kilometer an hour winds on Mars. I was wow, that's super exciting. And for some reason that was in my mind when I heard that song. And then I don't know if you guys remember, a couple years ago, the Opportunity rover had died on Mars. I think it was in February 2019, and anyway, it was a big deal. So that was sort of a current event at the time. I think it only happened a month or two before this challenge, so it's all super fresh. So that's where my mind went with a science fiction challenge. But yeah, just take inspiration from the things current events and things you're passionate about. I love space facts and stuff, so getting to put some of them into a science fiction film was kind of fun. and like the idea of robots on Mars is also fun. And also like I would say like half of the idea for this film was like reverse Wall-E, if you remember that cute movie. So yeah, just find the things you like and make them your own. So after I had my music broken down into like little tiny sections, I made a story. And it was like the roughest thing you've ever seen. I wish I still had the original drawing of it, but I made a recreation this morning. Looked a lot like this, just scribbles with times and like, hopefully I can remember what those little squares mean, like when it came to like drawing the pictures. But this was like the quickest part. Like I'm probably spent less than half an hour making my entire storyboard.
And was this is this sorry to interject, but was this the writing process for you, Angie? Was this like
this was yeah
this is like figuring out, like you listen to the music and then this is like figuring out what the story was?
Exactly, yeah. So the story kind of like came from the music, I think, because I kind of came in with like one idea and then like thought about Mars and then I was thinking about robots. One thing led to another, but my original idea was to do like something with like a spaceman, like trying to explore something. So it was a really different outcome than my like original like thought process, for sure.
That's super interesting. Thanks.
I don't know if this was mentioned yet, but this was a 48-hour challenge as well.
It was,
so
yeah.
This was, so this is like, for animating anything, I think that's like a very daunting process. But anyway, I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that it was a 48-hour thing.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it was a lot of work, and I fully used those 48 hours, no doubt. Like every day I'd wake up and that's the first thing I'd do was like make my breakfast, have a smoke, and then working on my movie. I'd have like an hour for my dinner and watch an episode of something on the TV, and then I'd be back at it. So it was easy like 30 out of the 48 hours for sure. So you could think about it like a week of work crammed into like one day or 2 days. But yeah, after the storyboard, it was on to the drawing. So I used a program called Sprite, which is like specifically for pixel art and pixel art animations. It's like super popular amongst like the pixel art community, but it is by no means the only way to draw or make animations, that's for sure. You can use GIMP, that's a good like free one, Krita or Krita, however it's pronounced, graphic scale, or even like Game Maker has its own sprite editors. There's lots of options. Like Photoshop, of course, like anything like that, as long as it can make like animated GIF, you're good. So I use Sprite to create a GIF for each scene. So like each little section of that film was like a different animated picture, essentially. So I started with the longest, most complicated scene. So the one I thought was going to take like the longest amount of time, which for me was this one. Had a lot of little parts. It was a lot of moving. I broke it down into 2 parts here just for like the putting it together portion, but like this was definitely the biggest scene in the film and it definitely took the longest time, so I did it first, and it really actually took like most of the first day of the challenge. So you get your like prompt and stuff at 7 o'clock, and then I picked my music, did my storyboard, and then this was the only scene I got done for the rest of that day. So it was a big time sink for sure. But I figured it was best to do like the strenuous ones first, because then like by the end of the weekend, you're probably going to burn out. You don't want to be at it. Like, you're not going to want to do complicated animations when you've just done like, a whole weekend of animating. So, make it easier for yourself later was my thought process. And then I had to pick a size that would scale properly. So like, if you could imagine, HD is 10 or 1920 by 1080 pixels, but that's an awful lot of pixels to be drawing in. So I needed to pick a smaller canvas, essentially. Oops. Because I didn't want to have like weird distortion like this. So if this is what it's supposed to look like, this is what it would look like squished, or like, I don't know if it's easy to tell, but this picture is like how it's supposed to look. And then this picture is scaled up 1.5 times, right? So the computer doesn't know what to do with, half a pixel. So it judges, what it thinks it might be. And then you get all these weird jagged lines and all these thick parts and strange looking things happening. So picking the right size was super important for doing this anyway. So I ended up going with 128 by 72 pixels because it was quite small. Among the smallest sizes I could do to scale properly every time. But there's, quite a few other ones you could go with if you were drawing like at a native res or whatever. So anyway, once I picked my size and had my like long scene finished or, good enough, I broke the scenes down in order of like importance. So which ones I thought, the film just couldn't do without. So in this case, I thought this one was like one of the first ones that was important. Like some of these scenes were, time consuming, but also, added to the story, like more than say, them going through the desert or whatever, which could be one scene instead of 3. So anyway, when I did all of these, all of my drawings were like first pass, and like all my animations were like terrible, and it was just like the absolute bare minimum to justify calling it like, an animated film, really. So like a scene like this is really just 2 frames. There's not actually much happening in it, but it adds, it has feeling to it. It just doesn't have a lot of animation and therefore not a lot of work. So it's like all about cutting corners, I guess, anywhere I could. So like in this scene here, I had, the same background, same clouds, same character squares there. Like, it's pretty much the exact same scene, just replicated to make, 2 scenes quickly. And, for anyone that is interested in programming, I could have saved myself like a ton of time by not animating these clouds by hand, instead like using a bit of code to move them for me, but I'll get into that a little bit more later. So like I said, I did a bit of programming to do this because I don't know how to make film, but I do know how to make a game. So I used a program called Game Maker Studio 2. It's like a game engine, I guess. So you can use their language to code little games and, make cute little projects. But that's not the only one, of course. There's Unity, like Python, there's Unreal Engine, there's endless amounts of game engines you could use to do something just like this. I just happen to use Game Maker. So essentially, you pop your scenes into Game Maker. and then you can change how fast they go, so how many frames per second each one plays at, and you can take your scenes or like frames out if you need to, or add them or duplicate them or what have you. But this is pretty much where I timed out the movie. So like if I had 10 seconds to fill from like breaking down the music, then I'd have to figure out how many frames I'd need to fill based on like how fast they were playing and how many frames I had in the scene. So it was like a little bit of math, like maybe needlessly, but that's how my mind told me to do it at the time. So that's how it was done. So this might be like a little bit complicated to anybody that doesn't understand like programming at all. So I'll make this like part kind of quick. But basically you'll put your pictures into GameMaker, pictures in GameMaker called sprites. So that's just basically the raw scene. Then you put those, you'll attach those pictures to an object. An object is essentially where you put your code in a game. So it's like what tells the machine to do something. So the most of the code used for this was just one line right here in the animation end event, which is just room go to next. And then the only other bit of code was just one line at the beginning that just told it to play the one song over top of everything. And I just mentioned rooms a second ago, so that's like where your scenes are played. So you can imagine like it's like the theater where your stuff is playing, if that makes sense. So after all that was done, and I had all of my scenes into GameMaker and they were all playing one after another. So essentially it was just like the code was telling it to once the GIF had stopped playing, like once it reached the end of the animation, to go to the next scene. That's essentially all of the code said in that sense. So once all that was done, I had to record it. So I use a screen capture app called Activepresenter, although there's like hundreds of different ones you could choose from. This one just happened to be like recommended to me by somebody, and it worked pretty good, I gotta say. But unfortunately, it didn't work very good on the old computer that I had at the time. The whole thing worked great. It was all perfectly timed out. I had, everything was working great. And then when I went to record it, like my whole computer crashed, like everything was lagging behind. None of the timings worked anymore. And like everything was just falling apart. So I had to like super last minute, like borrow a computer, download all of my stuff onto it, and then try to record it from somebody else's computer. And that sort of worked, almost worked, better than it worked on my own computer for sure. So I ended up having to go back and like remove extra frames and like add little sections to pad out the timing, because even like counting them right didn't account for the latency from like trying to record it. So like that was all kind of a nightmare. And like in hindsight, like I didn't think about this until I was like making this presentation, that I could have probably just used the like the Windows G like the game recording software that like comes with my computer, like most computers now, I think. because then you could just like record the past 5 minutes of what you did on your computer and there shouldn't be any latency. So that was like a big oversight on my part for sure. But that's it. But yeah, but like, don't be afraid to ask your friends for help when you need it, for sure. Because I definitely needed a computer to do this. I also got some really awesome advice from a friend. Like, he had gave me some really good ideas for like what I could do with the prompts and stuff, or like how to change my story a bit. So, you know, friends are invaluable when it comes to these kinds of things.
Yeah, you're part of a pretty large community of like online of pixel artists. Yes.
Yeah, there's quite a few of us out there for sure.
Yeah. Has this process been more or less like what you've done for because you've made this 3 challenge films now, right? You made a horror one and or 2 horror ones. Yes.
2 horror ones and the
sci-fi
one. Yeah.
And the sci-fi one. Yeah. Is this more or less been the process for each one since this first one?
It has kind of. Now, the more I do them, I feel like the more code I've been putting into them, because you could really like save yourself some time, like a lot of time, with just like a little bit of code, you know?
Yeah.
Like, instead of having to like move an object a pixel every frame or whatever, you can just like tell the computer to do that for you, you know, with a single line of code. So that makes it like a bit quicker.
Right. I'm also really interested. I think Curtis is planning on talking a little bit about it in his presentation, but how much of those storyboards early on ended up in the final film?
Most of it, actually.
Yeah.
To be honest, I think it's because I had broken it down into such like nice little sections that you know, I couldn't. It was hard to like cut things out of it. I think there was a couple scenes that like little scenes that didn't make it, but overall, like the general board stayed more or less the same. But also didn't have a lot of time to like think about changing it either. It was like, you know, whatever comes out, that's what I get.
Right, for sure. Yeah.
If you have like, you know, months to work on a thing, then you might, you know, a couple weeks in, you might be like, well, maybe I'll change this or change that. But if you have days to do it, it's like, well, this is what I got, and done is better than perfect.
Yes, as Elling is a common refrain from Elling heading into any of these challenges. Yeah, for sure. You know, it really is about. I mean, because you had no like. I'm not sure if you said this, but maybe you did. But you'd never made a film before this, basically, right?
No, I'd like been in one of the challenges as like an actor kind of one time, like an extra, really.
Sure.
Like,
but this was your first time kind of taking something you had like a skill you already had and transitioning into this new space. Did it feel
100%.
Yeah, did it feel kind of like a natural transition, or was it, I don't know, was it did you have to rethink a lot of things?
I mean, I feel like it's hard to remember exactly what the first experience was like, because I definitely remember like struggling with some stuff and some stuff like not working and like not working as it should have. That's like pretty common for any bit of programming. But yeah, it was strange. It was, I think the strangest part was like after the film was finished and like having it play in front of people was like probably the weirdest thing for me.
Yeah, that's always a little bit of a trip.
It was like I wasn't like ready for people to like see it, you know.
Yeah, well, I guess just sharing your work differently than you normally do as a game maker.
Well, yeah, like when people, I love when people play like games that I make. Then like with the idea of somebody like watching, you know, something that like came out of my head, I don't know, like totally scared me.
Did you find there was oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just say like it was, I think maybe in part because I was like kind of just like sad at the time when I made this film. Like I'd like just gone through like a breakup and you know, everything was just like depressing, and I was just like trying to like get an outlet, I guess. But
it's a very sad film, and I feel like all the films you've made for the challenge have been sort of heartbreaking in one way or another. Which, considering the style, is like so interesting, and it's still so effective.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know why exactly, because like I haven't been sad every time I've made a film, but it just feels like, you know, it seems like easier to tell a sad story maybe than like a happy one.
Yeah, just it kind of gets right to it. Do you when you're working on games, like, are you thinking about like storytelling or world building in the same way, or does something kind of have to like shift in your brain when you're kind of making these films?
Oh, I think it's like a totally different thing for me. To be honest, when I like make games, I like struggle to think of story elements. I've never been good at like making characters, or like writing even is like not my thing. So, you know, you might have noticed there's like no words in this film. Like any of the films I've made, actually, like none of them have had dialogue of any kind, in part because I don't know how to implement that, but like, you know.
Yeah, but they still
simple about it.
Yeah, they still say so much, and I love the fact that it comes. I didn't even realize that it came from music. That it started with like finding a piece and then sort of like building a story around that. I think that's such a useful tip for people who maybe don't know, like, or haven't told the story through film before, but are interested in doing it and want to do it. Like I thought it was so interesting.
Well, yeah, you definitely don't need to be like a wordsmith to like tell a story.
No. Sometimes it's worse. Sometimes it's worse.
Yeah, well, it would be worse if I had put words in it, like, you know, like I'm like struggling now to talk, so like, I feel like putting that into words would be like, oh, just a nightmare for me.
Yeah, you're doing fantastic. If there's any other questions in the chat, I guess that people can put them in now. I only noticed because I think you're coming to the end of your presentation, Angie. Was it if I?
Yeah, oh yeah, it is pretty well. Yeah, pretty well done. Yeah, that's my contact info. If anyone wants to like reach out, if they have like questions about, you know, more of the programming side, or even like more about pixel art, if you're curious, like feel free to reach out. I'm like, check my email every day. I'm always on Twitter, Instagram sometimes.
Yeah, no, it's sorry, I'm typing and talking at the same time. Shouldn't do that. Yeah, well, it's such a unique style. We're so happy to be able to share it with people now. It's like, it really has been. Every one of your films are always like, man, Angie killed it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a lot of fun. I gotta say, like, making films, even if, you know, you don't think you're any good at making films, because I didn't think the robot thing was, you know, very good when I first made it. Like, I had no concept. To me, it looks terrible because, you know, as an artist, you'll spend like a whole day working, or maybe even longer, on making a single character, and then you spend, you know, that much time doing, you know, most of a short film. So like the quality isn't, you know, where I would want it to be usually. Like, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so seeing like first pass drawings and like, in my mind, janky animations, like, it's hard for me to watch a little bit, but again, done is better than perfect. And
it is, and it's, but you know, it's still, I haven't watched it in a while, you know, just watching it just now. It's so effective. It really, like, it really does hit you. It's really, and it is simple, but it's you know, not only I don't think it's a case of done's better than perfect in this case. I think it's that simple equals very good. It works so well. We actually do have a couple of questions here.
Yeah.
So we actually have one from Lulu, who's presenting later. She's just wondering if there's any program that's a good starter program for someone who knows nothing about this style of animation. And then it kind of leads into the next question as well. But yeah, if there's anything you'd recommend.
I mean, I do love Aseprite. Like, it is my favorite program. Like, anyone who has me on Steam knows it's, you know, it's never closed. I have like 8,000 hours clocked on it. Like, It is my favorite for sure, just because it's simple. It only really does one thing, and it does that one thing well, and that is like pixel art. But graphic scale is a program I've never used, but from what I hear, it's like an awesome free alternative. So I mean, and free is great, of course.
Free is always good. This actually leads well into another question we have here from Charles, who's asking if you studied this, if you studied design or anything anywhere, or if this is all self-taught.
I'm completely self-taught. I had a roommate a few years ago that had made a little like Flappy Bird clone on Game Maker. Like he followed a tutorial and made this little game, and I was just like so blown away, like, because like this guy had never struck me as like a math guy or like a programmer or any kind. He was like an artsy guy, an actor, like a funny guy. So I was like, oh my god, if he can do it, like maybe I could do it. So I like literally went home that day, like downloaded Game Maker, did a tutorial. It was like to make a really crappy Pong game. I did it, and I was like the proudest I've like ever been. And then I just like stuck with it, really. Like that was pretty much it.
And when did the pixel art sprite element of it come in? Was it through using a sprite?
It was actually through Game Maker. I used
Game
Maker's sprite editor for a long time. Because I mean, like when I got into making games, in my pipe dream mind, I wanted to make this like really awesome, elaborate game project, and I was gonna sell it, and I was gonna make millions, and it was gonna be amazing, But I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to learn how to make art if I, I won't be able to afford to pay anybody. It's working like minimum wage, like.
Did you have any? Oh, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
That's the awkwardness of Zoom. Sometimes you accidentally interrupt. I was going to say, but did you have any inclinations towards design or art before that? Did you draw or paint or anything like that?
Yeah, I used to like to sketch, and like I used to acrylic paint a little bit, but like it was like a hobby, but not a serious hobby. I'd like pick it up now and again. But I don't know, I was never like serious about artwork before getting into game development. It was just like something I did for fun sometimes.
Sure, yeah. But I think it's also, it's just a further example of, like pushing, like taking something that you do or know a little bit about and pushing it into new directions. And then you ended, like, just from that, you ended up with a film at a film festival winning Best Emerging Filmmaker, Like,
I know, it's really crazy. For like 2 days work, not bad, right? Like,
yeah, hey, sometimes it's all you need, Sometimes it's just, you just need those 2 days. Or in this case, a month, if you're watching this. If you're watching this,
everybody should make a film, like,
yes.
There's, and like, don't worry about not being able to do any of this stuff. If all of this went over your head today, like, there's so many ways you could make an animated film. Like, this is like the way I knew, but I mean, geez, you could cut out magazines and make a little stop motion, or who knows.
In fact, that's exactly what's coming up later in today's workshop. Angie, thank you so much. Yes, I really think I look at you as a real testament of the power of the Nickel Film Challenges.
Oh.
So I recommend that anyone who saw this work and thought, wow, that's amazing, should go check out our animation challenge, which is over on our Facebook page.
Angie, I just wanted to say real quick
yes.
that like your point about it being done and not perfect is like kind of interesting, because the fact that it's not like that, your films don't have that really polished look to them, like I think that lends so much to the film itself and to the story that you told. So anyways, I think like I think it's better not like that. So for the impact of it. So anyways,
I mean, that could be it. I mean, I don't know.
that's what I'm going with.
I'm wondering, because we have Curtis Rio coming up next. But we're a little ahead of schedule. I wonder, Angie, do you, only if you're comfortable with it, if you're not, that's okay. Do you have any of the other your other challenge films online that maybe we could take a quick look at, just to kind of put a cap on it? Or I wasn't sure.
I don't know if I do have any of my challenge films online,
Okay,
but I might.
that's okay.
I might have one on the computer.
Okay, sure. Yeah, maybe.
What were they called?
Good question. One was I don't recall. The music box. Yes, perfect. Okay. So this was this most recent one. Oh, this is.
Oh, this is the Game Maker project. That's funny.
That is funny. Sure. Yeah. Maybe we'll take a look at this just to put a cap on it. This is from the most recent horror challenge, if I recall.
Can you see it? Is it working?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Oh no.
Oh, what happened?
I'm not sure. I feel like maybe this isn't the right file.
Was this a similar kind of thing though? Because this is also obviously very music oriented.
Oh yeah, see, like the process is started the same. Pick a song, let it tell the story.
That's so cool. I didn't realize that, but it makes a ton of sense actually now that you say it. Yeah, that's so cool.
Because I have no concept of how music is made or how it works, honestly, or even like how to edit music. I remember I'd found one song that was 6 minutes long, I think, and it was like, oh well, the challenge needs to be 5 minutes, so maybe I can cut this song up somehow. And then I don't know, easily spent an hour trying to cut up a song and couldn't figure it out. And I was like, I hate this, I give up. I'm picking another one.
Yeah, well, and it's a great testament to also just using the resources that you have. So yeah, well, thank you so much for your presentation today. I think it was super inspiring. I really hope that that people take away from it that you can
I hope everybody makes a cool animated thing this month.
Yeah.
I mean, I need to start one too, to be honest, but
well, you did it in 48 hours, so you've got plenty of time.
Oh god. It's a big 48 hours though.
Yeah, that's true.
It's you're booking the weekend off, that's for sure.
Well, thank you so much. Maybe what we'll do now, Curtis, we'll have Curtis start in maybe about 5 minutes if people want to get up to go use if people are watching and want to go use the bathroom or get a glass of water or whatever. And then so we'll take just a 5-minute break. And then when we come back, we'll be talking with Curtis Rio of Stellar Boar Productions. So we'll see everybody in 5 minutes.
Great. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, Angie. For a second, I thought I'd play the skeleton dance from Disney, but then I thought maybe it might get us in some sort of copyright trouble. So stay tuned, folks. We'll be back soon. All right, I think we'll probably get started here again soon. But before we do, Sandy, are you there? No, not yet. I want to know, I'm curious to know what Sandy has planned, because she's planning on doing the animation challenge with her kids, and I'm very interested to know what she's doing. Is there anyone in the chat right now, I wonder, who's working on an animation challenge film? If so,
to be determined for me.
Yeah.
We'll see. My workload right now is crazy, but I think bumping it up to a month is a great first step. So
that was that's what we did that last year. This is our second year doing it. We did it when we did it for the first time last year. We thought a month because it's January. Everyone's a little just slowly kind of getting back into the swing of things. Because everyone, especially after last year, I think everyone's exhausted. But yeah. Oh wow, Shanley Pomeroy made an animation for the challenge this weekend. Congratulations, Shan is always is a mainstay in our challenges, and her films are always incredible. So I'm so excited to hear that. Veronica, I'm seeing a smiley face. Do you got a film made? Veronica Diamond, hilarious local comedian, made a great challenge film for the documentary challenge a couple years ago that I still think about sometimes, about local rocks. Curtis Allen Poirier, I would love to, but I'm brand new to this. I have a Clip Studio and a cheap drawing tablet. Curtis, do you another Curtis for you. Do you often use? I mean, you'll probably get into it, but do you use a drawing tablet much to produce work?
Yeah. I have a drawing tablet monitor that I do all of my work on, but I have in the past done professional work on simple drawing tablets as well. Cool. And I have close friends that work in the industry who do incredible art on a drawing tablet. For me, I'm used to the monitor now. It just takes you a little while to get used to your tool, whatever it may be. And if it works for you, it works for you, right?
That's amazing. Well, so Curtis, maybe Curtis Poirier. Apologies if I'm mangling your last name. Maybe stay tuned for this next workshop. You might learn some. Robert Hicks. I don't have the confidence yet. I assure you that you can do some real simple stuff. Just with a camera and some pictures and moving stuff around. So I implore you to try and do something, because your sketch challenge video was great. Showed a lot of promise. So I bet you could come up with something with really good. Yeah, Robert Hicks, do it with no confidence. Yeah, who needs confidence? I don't have confidence in anything I do. I don't know if I've had confidence once in my life. This is great. Oh, Veronica Diamond, working on it right now during the live stream. Love it.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm loving all this support for Robert. Yeah, you can do it. You can do it, Robert. We believe in you. All right. Well, with that, I think we'll move on now to our. I'll stop yammering on, and I'll pass it on over to Curtis. Curtis is the I'd say, would you say, lead creative director of Stellar Boar?
Yeah, founder and director.
Yeah.
Stellar Boar, yeah.
Yeah, a fabulous animation studio based here out of St. John's. His work is super beautiful. I'm really excited to see what he has to share with us today. So I'm just going to pass on over to you, Curtis.
Well, thank you very much, Devin. I will say that I have, for some reason today, my internet is being funky, as you're sure you just noticed. So hopefully it doesn't interrupt us too much. But if it does, just let me know and I'll reiterate what I was saying.
Sure, I think we're doing good for now, but thank you for the note.
All right. So first off, I just want to say, thanks to Nickel for putting this on. I love animation. I love seeing more and more animation here on the island. So and you guys have been really sort of at the forefront of that over the last couple of years, which is amazing. And I also want to give a shout out to Angie and Lulu for talking about their process as well. I'm really interested to see what Lulu has to say. But when it comes to what Angie just spoke about, I'm fascinated to see the difference between our two processes and for her to approach it from more of a programming aspect as well, which I found really interesting. So anyway, So my name, as Devin said, is Curtis Brieux. I'm the founder and director at Storyboard Productions, an animation house here in St. John's. And today I'm going to talk about the script to screen process of creating a piece of animation. So I'm going to be talking about 2D digital animation specifically today. But you know, I was thinking, what am I going to talk about? Maybe I could do a workshop on just animation, but I thought it might be better if somebody's making a short film to learn about how to compartmentalize the workload and the stages that go into creating that full process, at least the way that I approach it anyway. So I am about to cover a ton of content here. I think it's really important content, but for anyone who feels like they might have missed something along the way, or if you have any questions, you know, we can do a Q&A at the end, or you can contact me through my website at stellarboard.com. I love talking about animation, so that's no problem for me at all. You can ask questions anytime. All right, so I'm just gonna start up my screen share here, and we'll get this on the go. Hopefully we can see that. All righty, so this is my animation production pipeline. So this is where I kind of start all of my projects. As you can see, it's a 7-stage process for me. And I would say arguably each stage of the process is more important than the last one. So for instance, if you are on stage 5 in animation, it doesn't really matter how great your animation is, you know, if you kind of didn't have the proper time and effort put into stage 2 for your conceptual art and stuff, because you're kind of just polishing something that isn't, you know, maybe up to standard. And I understand I'm talking about a project that may be larger, you know, you can work within the restrictions on a smaller project as well, but basically these things still apply. And that goes for, say, stage 6, doesn't matter how many like great compositing and effects and stuff you put on top of it. If back at stage 1, your writing isn't, you know, something that people want to really pay attention to, then, you know, you're just polishing something that may fall flat or be a little bit uninteresting potentially. So let's speak a little bit more about writing. For me, you know, I have some professional experience in writing, but not a ton. So I'll just talk about it sort of briefly about my personal experience. And the first thing that I would say is, if you are interested in writing, I would suggest you pick up this book. It's called Story by Robert McKee, specifically for script writing or screenplay writing. And you can get a hard copy or an audiobook where Robert reads it himself, and it reads like a lecture almost. I found it super helpful. So not only does he talk about the technical structure of a screenplay, he also gives advice on how to tell a story. So just as one small example, I learned from this book was the idea of indirect storytelling. So, you know, if you have a husband and wife, you know that they're getting divorced and that they're going to separate their assets and things are really heavy there. But the scene itself is they're driving down the road and the tire blows. So they're both outside of the vehicle. They're arguing about the car, the tire, how much this is going to cost. But those are just the words they're saying. We know what they're really fighting about and what they're really arguing about is everything else that's going on in their lives. And that scene can kind of go in that direction. So that's just one sort of tip in the iceberg little example. And so for me, when I'm writing, I usually start with a concept, some world building, maybe an interesting character, or even just a funny line. Like Angie said, you can start with music as an inspiration as well. And I just start working with it in a notebook, kind of point form, until I get something that I feel like it's ready to go to the next level. And then I will, either on a whiteboard or in my notebook, I'll start just blocking out a script. So I like to start with a story arc. I find I'm a visual learner and a visual person, so I find even drawing out a story arc, and there's many different types of story arcs that work, that you can research quite easily. For this one, this is a personal project of mine called The Redebtors. You basically, as you can see at the top here, you have the start, and then we established a routine, and then we have an inciting incident, which is the moment where everything changes and switches, and that's kind of the key moment to you know, take this comfortable world and throw a wrench into it essentially. And then we have more rising action, and then we hit a midpoint, and that midpoint is it could be the climax. That's the kind of vibe that it gives. But as the falling action happens, we throw a secondary obstacle into the mix to keep things interesting. It's something unexpected for the viewer. And then we go into rising action again, and then we have the actual climax of the story that leads down to the end. So again, just one story arc of many that I find works. And then as you can see on the rest of the board, just blocking down sort of a scene by scene or sequence by sequence basis, how can I tell that story within that arc, and what might I find interesting or somebody else find interesting, more importantly. So once I get past that stage, I move into a program called Celtx or Celtx. I haven't heard it said out loud by people who actually work there. So this is a great script writing tool. If you're interested in script writing, screenplay writing, I highly suggest you check it out. It's very powerful. It's also locally made here in St. John's, and it's free to use. So I would definitely take a peek. I have friends that work there. This is a sample of a script that I was making in that program. As you can see, it's sort of a creepy hotel mansion type story, but most importantly, the built-in features that this has is you can pretty easily and automatically create scene headers, action lines, camera notes, character dialogue, the whole thing. And it takes a lot of that sort of extra work that would be involved in writing this in a standard writing program. It also has features for storyboarding and other things as well, which I find really, really helpful. So anyway, I've used this tool for years. I highly suggest you take it out, or check it out rather. So at this point, once I have the script locked and ready to go, I move on to stage 2, which is concept art and style guide. So for those who don't know, a style guide is essentially a collection of art and design that is given to a team kind of as a Bible to reference back to make sure that even if you have multiple artists on a project, everything is going to stay the same. So for a smaller project like a 1-month challenge, this might just be a couple of image files that you have of the final design of your characters that you can crack open and look at. But for a larger project, it might be, a whole document of multiple images that that artists from any stage of the project can go and reference and make sure that it stays on model. So this concludes backgrounds, characters, and the first thing I like to do here is go through my script or go through my concept. For Angie's project, that would be just the quick little boards that she did, and just think about the major locations and the major characters, and not concerning myself with individual scenes just yet, just the big picture stuff. Oh yes, I did want to point out as well, as Angie did, that most of the digital pieces that you see here were made, that I'm going to show you in a moment, were made in Photoshop. You can get a free trial of Photoshop at adobe.com, but Photoshop alternatives that you can research also include GIMP, Paint Tool, Sai, Procreate, and many others. They're worth giving a Google search, seeing what's best for you and what's best for your current financial situation as well, because they are all effective at the end of the day. So these are some examples from Rob and Detective Boy, which I did. It was a project that we did here at Stellar Boar for Olin Rogers. You might know Olin as the creator from of Final Space on TBS. And these designs were done by my good friend Oso Osario. And again, we went through the script. We know the kid lives in the sewer. We know that he's a hoarder, so we might modify that and maybe put a bunch of robot parts on his shelving and all of that stuff, and just kind of like getting the scenes designed in a very rough and simple way. Sometimes we'll throw in some tonal work as well to describe mood in a scene. But once these scenes are locked by yourself, if it's a personal project, or locked by your art director, you hand them off to the background painters who are going to establish basically what the style for your environments are. Are we doing a cartoony show? Are we doing flat colors, or are we doing like shading and lighting? Are the backgrounds going to have lines, like black lines in them, or colored lines, or no lines? And for this show, Robin Detective Boy, we ended up going with painterly style. So this final painting of the character's name was Sam, his sewer home. This was painted by my friend Alina Ladipova. So this level is what would go into that style guide for the background artist to reference for the individual scenes later on. And here's another one here of that robotics factory. So basically, we do the exact same thing next with our characters. So I like using a sketchbook, just sketching out my character designs, figuring out what style we're going to go with. Are we going to do a semi-real style? Are we going to do cartoony? And just figuring out the shapes and kind of what this show is going to look like. If I were to do this digitally, this is my character Chip from an original animated piece that I'm working on called Blue Haired Boy. It's a good example of how I would approach a rough digital design, which is a little bit different. So I have these blocky, blobby silhouettes that I go in with an eraser and cut away with. So one sort of blob or shape could end up being a backpack or a hump or a hunchback character or a turtle shell or something. You know, it's just a really freeing way to keep your work really rough and loose, which is important at these early stages of design. So also I like to think about my costumes, you know, or my characters, what are they wearing in the script? So for instance, this is again, Sam from Robin Detective Boy. We know that Sam's going to be topless in one scene. So I want to make sure we design all of his tattoos so that the artists and animators can go and reference back to that. We know that he has indoors and outdoor clothing. So those need to be designed as well and put into the style guide. And then so once we have those kind of ideas put down, we also want to think about color palettes as well for our characters. So this is just, you know, we're not only thinking about color palettes just for the characters, but we want to make sure that our backgrounds and our characters kind of meld together really well. And if, like me, you aren't the best at color theory, it's something that I've, you know, studied a little bit and I've tried to get better and better at over the years. I highly suggest you take a peek at this website, colorlovers.com. It's essentially just a search engine. You can type anything into it and it'll give you just lists and lists of beautiful color palettes created by people who just really love color. And you can also do patterns and shapes as well. It's a really useful website. I highly suggest you check it out. And so once we have all these, you know, the colors and the character design and the all of that where we want it, then we take our finalized characters like you see here. This is my primary cast from my personal project, Blue Haired Boy. And these are the style guide level characters. So as you can see, I put them together into a single image so we can compare the height differences, which is very important when you go into at the animation stage. You don't want your character to be varying in size from shot to shot, for example. And as like same thing here, this is the character lineup of some of the characters, at least for Robin Detective Boy. And same thing. This is the final style that the people are going to, the animators, the artists are going to reference back to, all in a single image for all their height differences. And this is also, I'm going to talk about character builds here in a quick moment, but this is also the art that the build artist would look at and reference back to when they are designing the character builds as well. So that takes us to stage 3, which is builds in Animatic. I just want to ask Devin, my internet is doing okay? I'm not clipping out too much or anything?
No, you're doing good. There was one like tiny little drop at one point, but it didn't even skip anything. So no, you've been doing good.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks, Devin.
Yeah, no problem.
So yeah, stage 3 is builds and animatic. So if you are unaware what a character build is, essentially you can think about like at Halloween when you go to the store and you buy those paper cutout skeletons that have the pivot points at their joints, you can pose them and stuff. Essentially, a character build or digital character build is a complex digital version of that, where you have control over the individual pieces of art You can do multiple hand positions, mouth positions, etc. And it's a great choice for when you are doing, it's a faster choice essentially. So it speeds up the process. It may be a little more limiting, but it's a great choice for if you're doing smaller budget or shorter time frame projects. And I talk about this a little bit more coming up soon as well. And an Animatic, for people who don't know, is essentially a storyboard, like sequential images, almost like a comic book. And Angie showed hers, her storyboards earlier as well, that shows scene by scene a breakdown of your script. And an Animatic is you simply take those storyboards and you animate them to music and whatever type of video editing program that you are most comfortable with, essentially. So not everybody does this stage, but what I like to do is start with super rough, just 2-inch thumbnails of the entire animatic, or the entire storyboard rather, and then I'd use those to cut a very, very rough animatic. So we're talking, excuse me, super temporary dialogue, super temporary music, really just to get a vibe of, is the script working? What can I toss? What can I keep? And so this is a sample from another Olin Rogers project called Ghost in the Stalls. And I have the animatic right here. So again, this is super early, super rough, and I'll just let this play and let it speak for itself.
I hear this guy come in the bathroom. He comes in the bathroom, gets in the stall next to me, okay? And I see sneakers. He started pooping next to me, okay? Luckily, I was in the post-poop, okay? I was just supplying effects to the poop. You know, I didn't want him to know that I was in here. You know, that awkward, you know, you guys are both pooping but not saying any words, and then it turns into like some awkward like Skyping poop call. No, I don't part of that. Not me. So I don't want this guy to know I'm in here. I didn't want that awkwardness to happen. But in doing this, I created a new awkward moment of quietness. It was so quiet. It was so freaking quiet. I heard a fly fart. It was like a soft, angelic whistle. It was quite beautiful, actually.
So yeah, as you can see here, super rough. Some of the scenes are difficult to even tell what's happening in them, but others, like that fly fart sequence, stayed right until the very end piece. So here's just another quick clip. This one is from my blue-haired boy project. Essentially the same process, but one thing I want you to really pay attention to is just how rough the audio is. This is essentially me just yelling into my laptop microphone. I'm unconcerned with the quality of it. I'm just trying to see what's funny and what works.
Ooh, that's ham. Ham? You pull them up. My hands are full. This is it. Ha-ha! Your days of absorbing UV rays and producing oxygen are over, fiend. Chip, it's turn-based battle! Huh? Ugh, I was but a prince, thrust onto the throne after my father was murdered by his only son. Oh, that's a good backstory. My father was slain. I won't be. Ultra double backflip lightning slash 3! If only I could have attacked twice in a row. Huh? No!
So yeah, as you can see, incredibly rough, a little more than stickmen, a lot of it, but it still gets the point across, and it lets me know, you know, what's working here, is the story flowing, and basically all of that information comes out. So once we get past this level of roughs and we're happy with the direction things are going and things are moving, it's time to properly storyboard the piece if you have the time. Sometimes on a smaller project like a 48-hour challenge or a 1-month challenge, for example, this is as far as I would go with a storyboard before switching it up and going to clean it up essentially, just out of, you know, the necessity of it. But on maybe a slightly larger project, we do another pass on the storyboards. We start tightening things up, thinking about our camera angles, thinking about the expressions and so on. And some of these points I'm about to speak about are things that I would suggest keeping in mind, even if you're approaching it at this early rough level. So this is one thing that if you do have the time and you do have the experience and the effort available to do, I would highly suggest it. Not all projects do this, but these are mood boards. So essentially it's a color storyboard, a way of telling the story through color. They do require extra time, extra effort for sure, but storytelling through color can be a very effective tool. One of my personal favorite examples of this is one of my favorite movies of all time, Kung Fu Panda, which might surprise some people, but I found it's an incredible film, especially visually. So just as one little example, in this film, the color gold represents wisdom and positivity. The color blue represents anger, hatred, and negativity. So that's a lot of the colors you see on the main villain. And so in this particular scene, when Poe is depressed, he's questioning himself and his abilities. It's a blue nighttime scene. And then Oogway, the turtle, who is his master, comes in to give him some advice. And he walks in with a golden lantern. And the idea here is like, yeah, it's nighttime. He'd have a lantern. Of course, it makes sense. But if kind of subconsciously, or if you think about it, he comes in, he gives him this advice, this wisdom, and he leaves a lantern behind at the end of the scene and leaves. And it's this little visual hint of saying that Poe, although he's still sad in this blue scene, he has that glimmer of wisdom, that glimmer of positivity in his life again. So one small example of what mood boards and sort of storytelling through color can do for your piece. Next thing I want to talk about is not only the types of shots and angles you might put into your animatic or your storyboard, but also about the terminology, which is often misused in our industry. So we can start with some camera shot sizes. So, you know, we have the wide shot here in the top left. That's sort of, you can establish a location with that shot. It's not about the characters, it's more about your environment and what's happening. We move into the medium wide shot, a little bit more about the characters here. We start seeing some of their details, but there's still space for the environment to breathe. Medium shot, which is, this is a little close, but I usually say about the waist up. It's great for dialogue and kind of, you're starting to see more detail in your character. We get to the medium close up, and now we're getting more about expressions. This is like chest or shoulder up. You see mouth movements, the eye movements, and the expression a lot more. And then these last two we're starting to get into like sort of the emotional range. So the intensity of it, especially in the extreme close up, you see the reflection of the cross in her eye. It's a very important thing that she's looking at. There's a lot of intensity in this shot. So I do have some animation samples from a project that we did here at Stellar Boar called Surviving 71. I'll just go through them quickly. This is an extreme wide shot, which wasn't in the previous examples. It's essentially just pulling the camera out even further, can give a sense of sort of isolation or an overwhelming sense. And I have a sample written here. Picture a giant mountain with a tiny man standing in front of it, and it gives a sense of this sort of insurmountable task ahead. Wide shot, again, you can see the characters, but it's still about the environment. This is one that wasn't in there as well. The full shot, so you can see your character from foot to head. It's still some environment around it, but we're getting closer to the characters. We're kind of starting to see their detail a little bit more. The medium wide shot, again, this is Surviving to 71, which is a war story. So we can show a lot of pain and emotion here. The medium shot, which is a great point to say here, is a medium shot is a good precursor to like close-up shots. So you kind of don't want to start really far out and then cut immediately to an extreme close-up. You want to move your way in and give the viewer a little bit of breathing room there, or else it can come off quite jarring. Another thing that you don't want to do is start, say, on the front of a character like this and then cut immediately to the back of the character. Because that can also be jarring for the viewer. They can almost lose their spatial awareness of the scene that you're in. Medium close-up here. Again, you can show a lot of emotion, dialogue. It's a good scene for that. The close-up, again, we're getting into the detail of the faces or dripping sweat. and the extreme close-up as well, which is where you're getting into some real intensity and stuff. But another point is these don't have to just be used on characters, of course. You can have it on, as I wrote here, gun barrels, or to, for an example, like in Jurassic Park, with the waters rippling, that would be considered sort of a close-up or an extreme close-up of inanimate object, but it still shows the intensity of the scene. You know something big and something scary is coming. So next, I'm going to chat about camera shot framing. So essentially what you're going to want to do is combine what I just spoke about with what I'm going to talk about here. So you have the single, which is one character, 2-shot, 3-shot. Those are pretty self-explanatory. You can also do a group shot if you have a group of sort of primary characters, and something like the Avengers or something, you'd see a lot of that. You have your over the shoulder shot, which is used in dialogue a lot. Over the hip, you see that in Westerns. You have, you know, the characters are about to draw against each other, and you kind of show the hip shot, and you can see the bad guy in the distance. Point of view, that's you're looking through the eyes of the character. It's great for horror scenes, for instance, or if you're looking through a scope or binoculars to show what the character is seeing. A low angle is actually really interesting, an effective tool to give the people or the whatever's on screen a sense of power. So they're bigger, they're scarier, they're stronger than you. The opposite is the high angle. And as you can see, although these are the Avengers, obviously they're very strong characters. This high angle gives them a sense of, oh, they're looking up at something they haven't seen before, something that's strong and scary. And then we have some basic ones here as well, like the eye level and the shoulder level, but the Dutch angles, when you kind of rotate the camera a little bit, it gives a little bit of a skew angle. It can be used in horror really effectively. And then the overhead shot, which is just another sort of wide shot. You can use it to establish a location from a more unique angle. So I do have some samples from animation. This is Robin Detective Boy. These are the final scenes from Robin Detective Boy. So this is a single shot, self-explanatory, and the 2-shot as well, and then the 3-shot. So again, if you have multiple characters, you can more effectively tell the story all in one shot versus having multiple cuts, which can feel, again, jarring, confusing, versus just putting it all in one shot and just kind of letting it breathe. Over the shoulder is another example, the eye level shot. So obviously this character could have been put into a low angle to give him more of an intense vibe, but we thought it was important to have you looking straight into his eyes like he's talking to you personally. We have a high angle shot, again, to give that sense of the subjects are, at least in this story, the subjects are believed to be inferior. You're looking down on them, but it's also used to show that they're bound. You know, it's a descriptive shot as well. The high angle that I spoke about before, also called the bird's eye view, establishing the location. We can see the water in the distance. The men are leaning over. They're obviously in danger. And then one that wasn't mentioned before was the worm's eye view, which is you're laying basically on the ground. You're looking straight up into the air. This one isn't used super often, but we used it in Surviving 71 to great effect when the characters are falling straight into the camera. And so the next thing I want to talk about, probably the most misused terminology in animation, is camera movement. Believe it or not every camera movement is called a pan, which is something I run into a lot. You can basically, just to go through them, the dolly is a straight forward backwards movement. The pedestal is a straight up and down. The truck is a straight left and right. That's the most misused one for the word pan. A pan is the camera is on a single point. It's like you're turning your head. It's rotating on the tilt, you're rotating up and down. And the roll is that Dutch that we were talking about, where you roll the camera, and you can do combinations of camera moves as well. And there's ways to fake these in 2D programs like Flash or Toon Boom, which have camera tools in them. And you can do it much more easily in programs like After Effects as well, where you have the camera moving straight up and down, but you also rotate it. So you can move up in the air, but you're looking up at the same time. Adding these little bit of camera movements to a piece of animation can really take it up a notch in quality. So I highly suggest kind of just researching it, seeing what you can implement in your own work. So with all of this in mind, and our storyboard's done, we go into making our proper animatic. So this is a video clip from Surviving 71. I hope you'll be able to recognize that a lot of the tools are being used that I just talked about. They're being used here in this piece. But another thing to note here is that our sound quality has stepped up a level. So at this point, we want to make sure that we have our timing and our cutting down. So having approved audio is going to be really important once we get closer to this stage. Or for a project like Angie's, you've started with a piece of final audio and you cut to it. That's another really great approach as well, especially for a smaller project. So I'll just let this one play. We can take a peek at it.
Mar! Muti! Mar!
Yeah, so you probably recognize some of those shots from before, but as you can see, the character design isn't super finalized here. We did a lot of work after this stage, so it's still rough art, but for instance, in this piece, they did a lot of tonal work to add a lot of mood into it, which is one approach. And this second video here is a different approach. So this is more simple, rough sort of drawing. These boards were done in Photoshop and then put together in Adobe Premiere. So this is for a game trailer we did here at Storyboard called Wagon Wreck. And I'll just show you, it's a little clip piece from it. So different style, different approach, but same level of completion when it comes to the animatic. So yeah, that's another example of this project had music that was all finalized and ready to go. There's no dialogue, there's no sound effects. So that's a great approach for a smaller project. So I'm just gonna let this video play. I did mention character builds previously. So this is Adobe Animate is the project, or is the program rather that we're using here. And so basically what I've done in Adobe Animate is go in and make a digital, that skeleton cutout I was talking about. And as you can see, each piece is cut out and made separately. And within those pieces, we have multiple positions for the arms, multiple positions for the hands. And by doing this, it's a bit more work up front, but it saves you a ton of time later on. So the difference is I can take this character, the more art I put into it, the more smooth the animation is going to look. And I can animate him without having to clean up the animation too much afterwards, as opposed to more of a traditional style of animation where you draw it and then you digitally, you have to go in and you have to clean up every single frame and color them. As you can see, the head even has a full build. You're looking around and the mouth opens and closes. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to get too into like a tutorial for this, but trust me, there is a ton of content for free up on YouTube that's very easy to find, and it's super descriptive. And I highly suggest you, if you're interested in creating character builds and working in this fashion, that you check those out. If you're interested in animation, perhaps as a profession, character builds is something that is used super often on, especially on web content and some television content as well. So again, once our, oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I just want to say, Robert Hicks just wanted to confirm it was Adobe Animate was the program that you're using in this example here?
This example is Adobe Animate, that's correct. And I talk about it very briefly coming up as well, but there is a free trial for Adobe Animate. I don't think it's a very long trial, unfortunately,
No,
but I do talk about some alternatives as well coming up.
Awesome. Great, sounds good.
Yeah, not a problem. So yeah, once the animatic and the character builds are locked, we move on to stage 4, which is backgrounds, props, and prep. So basically what we are doing here is going through our animatic, looking at each shot individually now. Remember before I said I'm not worried about the individual shots, because that's this stage now. And we see what backgrounds are required. Also, what are the characters holding or interacting with? Any objects that do that are going to have to be designed for animation, and those are known as props. And lastly, the prep is where we take the animatic, we cut it out each individual scene, and we prepare it for animation. I'll talk about that briefly as well here coming up. So we go back to this beautiful background that was painted by my friend Alina. This is for Robin Detective Boy again, and the idea is the background artist is going to reference back to the style guide, reference back to this image. They're going to be given this super rough image from the storyboard or the animatic, and you can tell there's a bit of a computer in the background in the chair that the character is sitting on. They'll reference the style guide image and they'll paint the final piece. So computer in the background, excuse me, and the chair. And then essentially you rinse and repeat that process for every single background for your piece. So here's another example here, and then there's the background for it. So it can be a pretty labor-intensive process and a bit time-consuming. So it's something, if you're working on a smaller project, like a challenge, for instance, you're going to want to make sure that you keep in mind how many shots you're having. And a shot is considered, every time there's a camera cut, that's a different shot. And usually each shot has its own background. So, you know, if you want to use wider shots, and if you zoom in, maybe you can paint a larger background, just one background, so you can cut smaller pieces out of it and use those for different shots, and it still feels like the same environment because it's the exact same painting. So there's definitely tips and tricks around there that you can use for smaller projects as well. And next is the props design process. So this is an example from the Merby's animated piece that we did here at Stellar Boar. And as you can see, these include glasses that the character will pick up to drink from. It can be a book, or in the other project, it could be a gun, basically anything the character interacts with. So these were designed by Aaron Russell, who worked with us on this project, to be sort of thematically relevant to the content. So it's deep sea, it's underwater, it's mermaids, so, but it's also very inclusive. So we have the first guy is knitting a pride flag, and as you can see, he has a barrel with his yarn in it. The second image here is a fish-shaped pitcher for their lemonade, and then likewise in the last image there's seahorse beer and whale-shaped tea set. So this is the type of fun that you can have with your props that can add a lot to your world, and it makes it feel like the world. It's a very simple thing you can do to make it feel like the world is bigger than just what you're. Another great example, Tim Murray, who has a great mind for, my friend Tim Murray, who has a great mind for technology, the way that things interact and work, machinery. He designed the weapons for Robin Detective Boy. And if it wasn't for this descriptive design, we wouldn't have one of my favorite scenes where the bad guy pulls the gun, you see the clip light up, sticks into the gun, the barrel lights up, and it shoots this red energy. And it's this beautiful sequence that just wouldn't have happened if we didn't give the right time and effort into creating the props. So again, I understand on a smaller project, it's definitely more difficult, but if you have that theme in your head, if you know it's sci-fi, if you know it's horror, you can just right out of the gate, make sure you keep those themes in your mind and when you're designing your backgrounds and your props, and it can add a lot to your piece. So I'm just going to talk over this video. I apologize, it's kind of a gross video, but I just wanted to give an example of just how many files this next process can create, even for just a 5-minute sequence, which is what this was. This step is often overlooked in the animation world, and it gets done sort of last minute sometimes, which can be kind of dangerous because if your timing is off, it can throw your stuff off. But basically, every time there's a camera cut in your piece, that's a new scene, and we need to save out on a larger project each of these scenes as a separate video and audio file to be put into your animation program as reference for the animators. So by putting it in there, you can reference the position of the characters, you can do lip syncing to the audio, and so on. So this is a pretty long, time-consuming process, but it can be avoided on smaller projects just by simply doing your storyboarding perhaps in the animation program that you're going to be using. And that way you can kind of cut out the middleman. But I will say that on a larger, basically larger the project gets, the more dangerous that becomes, the more difficult to maintain. So you kind of have to weigh both of those aspects. So once we have all of this done and locked, it's ready to go into the next stage, which is finally animation. So, you know, a lot of people kind of that I speak to about animation, they kind of have the idea that animation, the whole of the animation process is you have an idea, you sit down and you start animating right away, which, as I've just spoken about here, obviously there's a lot of stages of the process that come before that. You can just sit down and start animating, but you run the risk of not knowing where you're going, not knowing what you're going to be doing. You run the risk of your story falling flat, your character's not looking great. So it's always best to compartmentalize your workload into stages similar to what I'm doing here to ensure that when you get to this stage, you're really ready to start. So what we also need to think about here is what style of animation we're going to be doing. The first style that I'll show is what I've already talked about, which is known as symbol-based or character builds. So currently, it's the simplest and most cost-effective way of animating, and it's the fastest as well. So using character builds is something I would suggest when you're doing a smaller project for sure, but it's also quite limited as a style of animation. So visually, it might not be as strong as the other stages, but you know, that's why you see it on a lot of web content, for instance. The second type is sort of a half and half, and that's what I like to do for a lot of my projects, where you have some build elements, but then you have a lot of what a traditional, or also known as redraw elements, which is more of an old school style of drawing each frame. It's a great way to save a lot of time without sacrificing a lot of quality. But it's still very time consuming to do that sort of even a bit of traditional redraw style animation. And then the last type, of course, is just straight up full blown traditional redraw animation where it's frame by frame, 24 frames a second. And it's incredibly time consuming, but if it's done right, it is by far the most beautiful form of animation. And it's the one that you would be most familiar with in any of the 2D Disney films. Excuse me, and then a lot of modern television, later seasons of shows like Steven Universe have a lot of that traditional animation in them as well. So first, I want to talk about some software, as I said I would earlier. The two main industry standards right now for 2D digital animation are Adobe Animate and Toon Boom Harmony. Each have free trials, but there are completely free alternatives out there as well, like Open Tools, Pencil 2D. So it's worth taking a peek at those if pricing is an issue, or if you just want to, you know, practice and get a vibe for how digital animation works. But at the end of the day, Toon Boom Harmony and Adobe Animate are most definitely the industry standards that have the most use in my experience. I want to talk about this briefly. I want to point out a huge part of quality animation, the 12 principles of animation, which were established by the old masters, Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnson. Unfortunately, I won't be able to get into this deep today because of time restrictions. This would be a few workshops in and of itself. But as you can see from this screenshot, the talented Alan the Becker has done a 20-minute video on YouTube. It's like 25 minutes or something like that, talking about each element, and it's a great place to start. I highly suggest you go pop in and check that out. Although, you know, they're all important steps. There are some basic ones I can point out really quick. If you are doing a smaller project and you want to just get some extra quality out of it, I would say number one, squash and stretch is really interesting. Let's say you have a bowling ball that's bouncing through the scene. Obviously, that's going to stay rigid. But if you have a water balloon bouncing through the scene, it's going to stretch as it's falling. When it hits the ground, it's going to squash against the ground and do like a pancake-like shape, all the while maintaining its full form. So you don't want it to stretch too far, but stay too fat, and it looks like it's zooming in or growing. But that type of technique can be used on a character, a cartoony character as well. If it jumps through this, if you have a character that jumps through the scene and you want to give them a lot of speed and energy, you can squash them, and then they hit the ground. This, you know, it just adds a ton of, I don't know, a little extra professionalism and quality to your animation. Another one being anticipation. So if you have a character that moves, instead of just having them start moving immediately, have them kind of lean in the other direction a little bit and then start moving. Or if a character is going to slap another character in the face, the slap's going to feel like it has a lot more energy if you haul way back first and then smack them. So that type of anticipation could go a long way. Number 7, arcs. That's another thing you don't want. If you have a character who's talking, like I am, gesturing a lot, you don't want those gestures to be in straight lines. You know what I mean? For instance, you want to have everything be in sort of rotational movement. And that's the same as if a character is walking through a scene, you have them bouncing on arcs, and it's going to have much more of an organic movement. You can forego that if you have a robotic character, for instance, you want them to move in super sharp, direct lines. You know, that's, you know, it's always good to know what not to do as well sometimes. So, and number 8, secondary action. This is something that I find really important. Let's say if you're moving a character's arm up through a scene, again, you don't want that robotic, super straight arm. You have the wrist kind of follow. You have the arm leading and the wrist is following and dragging behind a little bit. That's secondary action. You can also say if the character's wearing a cape running through a scene and the cape's flowing, the body is the primary action, the cape is the secondary action. If they make a sharp turn to the right, the cape goes a few frames later, and it can give a sense of weight and gravity to your world. So anyway, those are just a couple, definitely worth looking into and digging into these more deeply if you're interested in animation. But at least if you're working on a small project, just keeping them in the back of your mind, or even having the list up so you can look at it and be like, oh, maybe I should add a little squash and stretch here to add a little extra to this scene. So let's get into some samples. These are videos of projects that we've done here at Stellar Board. We're starting with this one from Robin Detective Boy, going from rough to clean to show you guys sort of the full animation sample. And this one is using character builds. And there's also one scene where we mix a little bit, or there's a couple scenes where we mix a little bit of that sort of half and half I was talking about, throwing a little bit of full motion animation in there as well. So as you can see, anything that has a line and is white is more full animation. So animating cloth using a build is really difficult. So we mix it up, but the rest of the character is a build. So compare that to here, the shoes and the head are character builds, but the rest of the body, it was too grandiose of a movement to do with a character build, which is quite limiting. So we do that in more of a traditional. And then here, this character is 90% character build, and 10% traditional or redraw animation just for the cloth blowing away. Here's another animation sample. This one is from the Merbias project. This one, I did the same thing. I used the character builds for the heads a lot in this, and then the bodies were animated more of a traditional redraw style, but on a really low frame rate, because this one was done under a pretty tight restriction. So lowering your frame rate, let's say usually you do 24 frames per second, draw it on 12 frames per second instead. So you're having the amount of drawings that you need to do per animation. And you can set those frames per second right in programs like Toon Boom or Adobe Animate, and it'll automatically change the length of your timeline. So even if you've already drawn images, you go, man, I don't want to, you know, I don't want to add all these extra images. You can either add frames to kind of move things up, or you can just switch the frame rate and it'll render it out at a different frame rate. So yeah, I'll just let this play as well. We can see those props in action as well. This little example at the end there as well, the characters were just done on flat planes, and then by doing a zoom in, making them essentially, we faked the zoom in, we made them small in the scene and just blew them up. It made it, gave it the feel that the camera was going underneath of the characters as they were jumping up out of the water. And so the last example here, this is an example of a completely fully traditionally animated scene from my personal project, The Redeaders. And as you can see, it starts with reference images, or reference video rather, for acting, which can be a really good tool to use in this type of work.
No need to worry, there's no such thing as ghosts. There is no such thing as ghosts. No need to worry, there's no such thing as ghosts. There is no such thing as ghosts. No need to worry, there's no such thing as ghosts. There is no such thing as ghosts. No need to worry, there's no such thing as ghosts. There is no such thing as ghosts. No need to worry, there's no such thing as ghosts. There is no such thing as ghosts.
I don't know if you guys heard, but there's no such thing as ghosts.
I was gonna say, I was like, I don't know, is there?
Yeah, well, that's one thing when you're animating. Like my, my headphones broke a little while back, and so I had to use speakers, and it was just the same line on loop. I almost drove everybody in the house insane.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes it's like a 1 or 2 second scene, and it's just like so very repetitive, but so worth it in the end.
Totally. Yeah.
So this last video, which is a comic book, it starts on black, so I apologize for that. It's a comic book announcement video we did here at Celtx for Derek Loffman's Ruin World. And this is just to, I'm going to hit play here and talk over it. So this is just to showcase, again, we're in Adobe Animate, showcase how many layers and frames go into even a single shot. So people say animation is 24 frames per second, which is generally true, but consider it's 24 frames of art per character, per prop, per word, if you have like the boom word that was just up on the screen, per effect. So you have to consider the background art and the layering as well. And so it is an intense process. So this is all to say, you know, if you do have the time to do a little bit of prep work in the beginning, your character design and everything, just make sure that you assign the proper amount of time to do your animation as well, because this is arguably going to be your most labor intensive part of the animation process. It's very, very time consuming to make sure that you get it done right. But it can be done, even for a 48-hour challenge. It can be done, as we've been seeing. But it's all about knowing your limitations and working within them as well. So once our animation is locked, this takes us to the next stage, which is compositing, effects, and audio. So there's not only at this point the audio team will finalize the music and the sound effects and make sure it flows very nicely. We're also going to handle the compositing effects. So these are the elements that can really make a piece of animation go from sort of a B-grade YouTube level up into, you know, the quality that you see on a television series. So effects are things like explosions, debris, lighting effects, and so on. So, you know, that being said, not every project has the time or the money or the capability to do this, especially if it's a small 48-hour challenge. So it's important to know your limitations, like I said, and work within them. But I still thought it was an important aspect of the overall process to chat with you guys about even briefly. So I will say the main software that is used for this is After Effects. Again, it's another Adobe product. However, Toon Boom Harmony also has effective tools for compositing and effects as well. And there are more cost-effective or free options as well, like Natron and Fusion, which may be better options if cost is a problem, or if you just want to play around with it and see what's up. So I have several samples here from Surviving 71. My lead effects guy on this was Daniel Elliott, and he did an amazing job. So these were edited from the animatic all the way to the final shot. So I'll just let them speak for themselves here. Again, we have some video reference here. One here.
Mar Muti Mar Mar Muti Mar Mar Muti Mar Mar Muti Mar.
And I'll show you this last one as well. Big fan of that shot, and the effects are subtle. A little dust in the air, some ash or embers floating by, and it just gives a sense of the environment as a whole. So I'm getting close to wrapping up here now. So I will say that once each of these individual scenes for your whole piece are designed and boarded and painted, animated, and the effects are locked, we move on to the final stage, which is editing. So this is where each of your final scenes will be put together. We'll ensure that it's flowing perfectly. We make any final adjustments to the sound or the timing, and then you hit render. And these things, as Angie mentioned, she had trouble with her rendering process. These things can take a long time to render. This is part of the process that might come up to bite you. So if you're looking to hit a deadline, if you're on sort of a 48-hour challenge, for instance, you're going to want to make sure you allot a good chunk of time just to render out your final video, which is essentially you take it from your video editing program and you render it out to a single video file that you can send. It depends on the quality of your settings, your computer quality, but some of these can take up to hours to render and make changes, and then maybe something broke, you need to go back and fix it and then render again. So really, really important to make sure you give a proper amount of time for that. So I will leave you guys with lastly with the fully animated Merby's piece that we did here at Stellar Boar. This was done for charity, so it's a good example of working under limited time and budget. And I think it's a perfect example of pulling some of the tricks out that I was talking about to get the piece done without sacrificing the quality, just keeping, you know, the essence of the piece in mind right off the bat on every set of the stage or every stage of the animation process. So yeah, we did a mix of character builds and low frame rate animation, like I mentioned, to speed up the process. We had very minor effects pass on this. Anyway, I hope you guys agree that it's proof that, you know, working under limitations doesn't mean you need to sacrifice quality of the piece. So I'll just let this play here. All right. Well, that's it for me, everyone. So thanks again for coming to this animation process crash course. And I think that was definitely the definition of a crash course. Again, if you have any further questions or if you feel like you missed anything, you can feel free to pop over to stellarbore.com. You can send me an email. I love chatting about animation, so that's no problem for me. And yeah, I can pass it back over to Devin.
Yeah, Curtis, thank you so much. What an incredible presentation. So much insight into how much work goes into making, like, you know, the kinds of animated films we watch all the time. Like, and you know, you always get that. I don't know. I always get that feeling watching animated films. I have always this thing of like, this took so much work. To the point of like almost any animated film I watch now, I'm just like, this took so much work. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it is an insane. Yeah. It's an insane process, and I am amazed that people do this.
yeah. It's worth it. We don't have a ton of time for questions, but this kind of is appropriate what we just mentioned. From Shan, just asked, what do you find the most challenging or tedious aspect of the animation process?
That's easy. Animating. Yeah. 100%. Yeah, it's my favorite part of the process is, and I think that would be the answer you get from 90% of animators. My favorite part of the process is the creation part, the writing, the concept design, and I love the result of animation. But the physical act of animating, especially if you're doing more of a traditional style of animation, is so labor intensive and time consuming. Yeah, but all of that to be said, and like you said, this is what I was talking about, again, much larger projects than what we're saying, maybe a 48-hour challenge or even a 1-month challenge might be. But it's just understanding what your piece is, knowing what your limitations are. So although animation might be complex and time consuming and difficult, there are tons of tips and tricks out there. Like I said, if you want to email me, we can chat about it. You can find them on YouTube for free all over the place. I would say, don't get discouraged at looking at that mountain of work in front of you. There's always ways you can chop that down and make it super manageable within any time frame.
Totally. Well, I think that's a great note to leave off on. Thank you so much, Curtis. That was an incredible presentation. And yeah, everyone go, you know, keep an eye out for whatever's next from Storyboard, because it's yeah, everything's so lovely. So thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks again.
Great. So we're gonna go right on through because it's 3 o'clock now. So we're heading into our last presentation, which is with Lulu Keating. Lulu Keating is a filmmaker based out of Dawson City, right, Lulu?
Yes, that's right.
Yes, Dawson City, Yukon. And she's a regular fixture at the Women's Film Festival. I always love running into you, Lulu, I gotta say. Yeah, we're just gonna jump right into. She's gonna talk a little bit about her. I've been calling it like collage style animation. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I don't know what to call it now after seeing those last 2 presentations and realizing just how different, what different styles there are. It's not pixel art. It's not what Curtis was just showing us. And it is single frame, but almost like analog, because it's just the concrete object underneath a camera, take 2 pictures, or yeah, 1 frame of it and then move it, and then another frame and move it, etc. So it's just very simple, concrete, 3-dimensional type of animation.
Lovely. Well, I'm so excited. So first thing I'm going to do for you, Lulu, is I'm going to copy the link to a Google Drive folder, and it'll be in the chat for people to see. And that has some documents that you're going to be referencing throughout the talk. So if people want to open that and have a look, they're right there. And I will also start sharing. Would you like me to start sharing my screen? Yeah.
Sure. Let's just take a look at a sample. Sure. The Moody Brood trailer. We'll just look at a minute of this, I guess, but it'll give you an idea of what I'm talking about in terms of the animation style.
All right.
Let me paint the backdrop. Nova Scotia is a small province in Canada. Antigonish is a small town in what the tourism department calls.
Okay, it just stopped. So
that's my fault. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So photograph
Dad,
with a slight zoom in.
Keating. And this is the cast they unleashed
cutouts.
on the world. The instability of the first half of the 1900s
This is a Black
affected our
Horse
parents'
grip.
generation. By the time the Second World War was over,
Just
it
dust
seemed
it
everyone
away.
in
so the
Canada
animation
tried to
underneath
model
it
their
is
family on this
apparent.
formula: a Christian community, a single-family dwelling,
And some
a
of this
working
was
father,
done
a
more in the
stay-at-home
editing.
mother.
You know, we had those. I
But
had
they
the
didn't
wide shot, but
necessarily add up to
this
the
wide
ideal
shot,
functional
but then
family.
in on these aspects of
Was
it.
our mother feeling betrayed when she went swimming that day?
And then a photograph.
Of course, she
with
just
little
found out that she was pregnant again.
elements.
I went swimming in the ocean and apparently
And maybe we can
caused
stop it
alarm to
there,
some
Devin.
Sure, no
people.
problem.
So that might give people an idea of the type of animation. That was 1999 I did that, and at that time the world had not seen a 40-minute documentary that was animated. So it got a lot of attention because it was an animated documentary. Nowadays you see tons of animation. You know, it used to be at that time that there would only be animation used to demonstrate some kind of scientific or medical or whatever or astrological. What, you know, it would be like using a graph, except it would be animated. So that was interesting to me, was that I didn't realize that a documentary of that length animated was a novelty, and so it got me a lot of attention, like I say. Another one that we can show is the trailer for Lucille's Ball, and I emailed you a new link to that. Okay.
I got it ready.
So, yeah, just as an example of here's a feature film, we'll just look at the trailer. And because they're animated sequences within the feature, I'll let it play for a bit.
Parents have been making sex sinful and ugly for millennia. Why? So their daughters don't get pregnant. Now here we are in the era of unprecedented freedom. We have the pill.
If we die right now, we're going to hell.
Some days I'm lost and questioning. Other days I have all the answers.
Lucille.
Dad, I'm just saying that when people get married, they can finally have sex. I'm gonna be a musician. Great. I write and I sing. And I'm looking to put together a band.
Yeah, I'm the singer.
Hold on here, for the morning has no candle. The shiver in the sky. Jesus Christ, Dad.
So basically with this film, it was a very limited budget, typical Canadian situation these days. And so within the limits of the budget, by having animated scenes, I could actually pick up some of the 5 scenes, 9 scenes that we lost during the shooting by doing animation. I had already planned on animation. It was already in the script, but we were able to substantiate those scenes that were missing, those story elements, by having animated little scenes. And then also, like, if you just scroll back to the beginning again, I'll just mention a few little things in this. So just so you can quickly scroll through the next, all these other scenes that come after are animated. So they weren't necessarily in this order. They were pretty evenly dispersed throughout the film. And it was more, oh yes, let's just pause here for a second. Again, like in this grocery scene, we didn't have, the budget was about 350,000. So we didn't have the opportunity to shoot on location. So in this, for example, I went into a grocery store, took a photograph of the produce section, and where we spent the money on this film was buying, renting a video projector and screen, so that, and the screen was the biggest we could find, which was probably about 16 by 18 feet or something. And then that was our backdrop. So frequently, and if you scroll ahead to some other scenes, I'll stop you when you get to another scene where we use the back there. This other scene, just keep going or go back to the motorcycle. Was we bought these little clips and projected it onto that screen so that we just had the live action of the characters sitting on the motorcycle with a fan blowing their hair and a video clip playing in the background. Anyway, just an idea of how this kind of visual effect, I know it's not animation, can save some time and money. So I guess that's what I wanted to, and it can fix problems, as I said, making up for lost scenes or correcting problems in the shooting by cutting to an animation when there's a continuity problem, for example. Okay, so then with shooting, I guess I have a document here that Devin just put up on the screen that'll be in that Dropbox folder. It's basically shooting stop motion animation with a DSLR camera. So a DSLR camera, just for anyone who doesn't know, is basically just like your Nikon or your Canon. Digital single lens reflex is what the DSLR stands for. It means basically SLR is what you see through the lens is actually through the viewfinder is actually what you're seeing in the frame of the film. That you're getting what you're looking at. So this process of shooting that I describe here, it's from when I did some shooting back in at NIFCO. I got an artist residency to shoot this little animated film called Foretold, and we'll see a clip of that later. But I've since found another simpler method of importing the images, but this will just give you an idea. And so you'll see in the folder a step-by-step, some of my notes, some is other people's notes, all combined. And there's different links to videos that'll show you how to set up the camera, all of that kind of stuff. Basically, what we're looking at is having a camera mounted on a tripod, pointing downward onto a tabletop, and the tabletop is your surface where you're able to lay your artwork. It's important to have ideally two lights, one on each side, that are of the same balance light-wise. It's important to cut off the natural light that's coming into the room so that there aren't light shifts during the course of shooting. I always tape off a little square around the tripod leg, around the tabletop, the table legs, so that if anything is jolted or shift, then you can realign everything so that you can pick up exactly, ideally, where you left off. And tape down the tripod, tape down the lights, make sure everything is as stable as possible. Generally speaking, and these notes are going to describe this, you're going to be turning off all the automatic functions and doing them all manually. You don't want the camera automatically adjusting. For example, if you throw on your sweater and your sweater is white and it's reflecting more light onto the artwork, your camera, if it's on automatic, will shut down the diaphragm in order to prevent as much light coming through, that much more light. Anyway, you want it to basically be on manual. You set it and then you're done for that scene. And it doesn't matter if your light varies because of something as simple as putting on a white shirt. The focus also, you don't want to have it on automatic. You want to have it on manual. So it's the focal plane then is the surface of the table, and it's not going to vary if you are dropping some sparkly stuff onto your table. You don't want it to be focusing on that as it's falling down, etc. It's good to keep a record. I don't have a printout of this, but I'll just hold it up to the camera. Basically, this is a shoot log form that I made up for the last film we did, which was called King COVID. And it basically just records the scene number, whether you've got it on a, which camera you're shooting with. In this case, we had two cameras with on two different tripods. Well, one was on a copy stand, one was on a tripod. And we had 3 different camera cards, so it would indicate which card you were using. Just in case there was a flaw with a card, we'd always have a record. Oh, well, that's the card we were using. Which lens we're using, because one thing we found out was with the Nikons that we were shooting with, it kept overriding we would take it off auto manual white balance, but it kept trying to automatically white balance. So all of our tests were having this flicker as the white balance kept changing and trying to accommodate the artwork. We needed it off. So our solution was that we found that we took off a zoom lens and we put on fixed lenses. In this case, we had a 24 or a 50 millimeter lens. I'm getting into too much technical stuff here, I think. Anyway, we had a really neat thing, which I had at NIFCO for Foretold and also had at for King COVID, was underlighting. So in St. John's, when I was working there, I borrowed a light table from a photographer. Sheila O'Leary lent me a light table. So then I had the option of either shooting the artwork underlit or lit from on top. And it was amazing how much of the film we shot underlit, because it just gave a whole luminosity to it. And with the 2 lights on the side, we could increase, they were just lights from the equivalent of the film co-op, like NIFCO. It was, it's called Kayak, Klondike Institute of Art and Culture. So their lights, you can crank them up luminosity wise, and we would record on these sheets whether they were at 100% or 10%. And depending on if we were using the underlit, which we mostly were, then we had lighting from underneath and lighting from on top to nicely balance everything. And then we'd also record the f-stop, the ISO, and the shutter speed. Generally speaking, we ended up with an ISO of 100 and a shutter speed of 150 throughout our shooting. And we'd record what number it was on our little digital card. The start of the shoot might be at 500, and we would shoot all the way to 1201 and mark any notes. Anyway, I'm getting into too much detail. Okay.
I think it's really helpful, actually.
Oh, okay. All right.
For sure.
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to check here with my notes to make sure.
Sure.
Control lights. Yeah. And the shoot logs. Okay. So now another thing that's, maybe we'll just take a little break from my voice and just show, why don't you show number 4 now, the Foretold. So this is a clip from the film that I shot at NIFCO. Just before you begin, I'll just say that what surprises people is how quickly this kind of animation can go. Once you're set up, you've got the camera, you've got the lights, and it can be very simple. You can actually shoot many minutes of animation in a day. And even though you might want to reshoot it again, it's very quick process when you're actually moving something across the screen. So while we play, I'll just kind of give you an idea of how quickly these scenes could be shot. So this whole film I was shot within about a week. About a week was set up, and then that was sand. I actually found that I could blow the sand more smoothly than move it with a brush, though sometimes I'm using a brush.
Some things
And
are
just stop
predictable,
there.
like the sun. It
Um,
rises in the
So
east.
just with that, just if you can scroll back a little bit, snake that appeared, as I was blowing the sand away, this is the kind of magic that I like that happens with this kind of animation, is that something might appear and then you can just embellish it. Oh, poke the eye in and make it into a nose, a snout, and have this be that figure, whatever it's called, that eats its tail, the symbol of time passing. So that was totally just a mistake that happened during the shooting. Now, what happened to me, which was a stupid mistake after doing animation for like 40 years, is that I didn't time out each sequence. And remember, at the start of this workshop, Angie was talking about her music having dictated the length of the scenes and having timed that all out. And Curtis talked about his, doing that with dialogue. And what I made the mistake of doing here was not timing out, so that I didn't have enough picture for the narration. So I had to slow down the picture in order to fill the time in. That was really stupid. Anyway, so it's good to even just clock yourself with a stopwatch to know, okay, I need 14 seconds of animation for this line of dialogue. Therefore, it has to be 3 times longer than what I just shot, and reshoot the thing instead of afterwards having to stretch it out and make it look jerky or jumpy. Okay, maybe you can keep playing here, and I'll just talk through some more little things that happened in this film.
Sounds good.
Some things are predictable, like the sun. It rises in the east.
So
sets
another
in the
thing as you're
west.
shooting is to give a handle on each end. So this empty scene here,
always get
I
the
would
whole
shoot a
story
little bit,
or see the
shoot 2
entire
seconds, 3 seconds of extra, so that I can do a dissolve, or from one scene to the next, or do a fade out at the end
Acupuncture.
from one to the next.
We know it was first practiced in China 2,000 years ago.
It's just so much fun. Like, I just happened to be going to an
In
acupuncturist.
1991,
She
a
gave me
body
these
was
supplies,
discovered
and I
in the
found
Alps.
out from her about how
Otzi, the
acupuncture,
Iceman,
they thought it
had been
was
attacked over
only so
5,000
old, but it
years
actually
ago.
was thousands
He
of
was
years
middle-aged and had bone
older.
degeneration.
And it just made the point that I needed to be making about what we think is fact
His body
keeps
has
changing.
61 tattoos located at acupuncture meridians. He
So
died
some of this work was
3,000
done
years
by the
before
animator, of
acupuncture
course.
was
I'm giving
believed
her
to have
these
been
elements,
invented.
Annie Cairns here in
And he was
Dawson,
thousands
and
of
she's
miles from
cutting them
China.
together. That little watery bit there was just a shot that I took in a bathtub and gave it
My
to her
friend
when we were
Helen Hill
trying
was a
to, our
filmmaker.
transitions were what were
She
difficult.
made animated
So I was
films,
always looking
worked with
for
Super 8 and 16mm film.
something that could, like the water
She
just
was a
transition
vegetarian
nicely
who owned a
between one
pot-bellied
shot to
pig.
another.
Helen
And
was
again,
only
here we're
36
looking
when
at
she died.
these elements are things that I shot, but so much
I
of
had a
what
powerful
is put
dream.
together is
In
like
this
that
dream,
push
I go
in
to
that was
Helen's
made
studio.
by the editor
Her
on
young
the
friends are
photograph.
there packing up
I'm
her
not a
artwork.
very skilled technical
join
person,
them.
and I don't intuitively
It's time
come
to
to it.
start putting her
That's
affairs in
why
order.
I find it so great to be able to have other
Through the
people to
windows,
bring on
we
board.
watch a
And
sudden
if we're
angry
only
rain.
a few of, if it's a no budget film, as so many of our films
Just as
are,
suddenly the rain
it's really
stops
difficult to get
and the sun
to hire
shines.
someone. So rudimentary skills, like I did the preliminary edit of this, put the shots together, realized I had some problems,
Next, I
and
stand
then
before a large
got a
building.
grant to hire
I
someone
enter.
to do
A
a
young
decent
man
job of the
sits there,
editing.
curly
And that's
black
where
hair,
Annie came on board
cherubic
and
face,
saved the film, more or less.
eyes that don't quite
Um,
work together.
So I think maybe we'll,
He holds out his hand.
well, I guess I can keep.
I am
Okay, so one
Fred.
thing that I'll talk to you about too is
Yes, I
the
say.
aspect ratio. And
When I
one
close
of the
my
charts
eyes,
that Curtis showed
physical
us
touchstones fall away.
was
I
an
find
image of
myself
a
in a place that I
frame
know,
that
a
had
place I've been
mark off
before.
for camera
Perhaps
safe, I
we all
think,
know this
and
universal void.
what you're shooting.
I
So
start to swirl
when we saw the
round
little
and around.
trailer
I'm
for
caught in
The Moody Brood,
vortex. It's
the
terrifying.
aspect ratio, which is
I know I can escape
what you're
by
seeing
waking myself
inside
up.
the
I've done that
frame,
before.
sorry,
Then I realize
was
I'm almost
askew
spiraling
somehow.
down.
when we shot back in '99 on film, we had pushed in a little bit in the editing process, but then when the trailer came out, somehow it's showing the edges of the frame, and it screwed us up. So that's the thing that we want to be careful about. And I'll show you what we did. Again, like on the last film I did, I had the luxury of being able to hire somebody as a technical consultant. Dan Sokolowski didn't get paid a lot because we didn't use him a lot. But boy, when we needed him, he was there. Just stupid things that were messing us up, like what is the aspect ratio that we need? How can we maintain an aspect ratio? Well, he just printed this off the internet. We used it, we put it on our table, and we're able to tape down on the monitor we were using. So from the camera, maybe just stop the video or get rid of that image for now. Yeah, so basically, we did have, again, this technical coordinator really helped because he was able to wire us up to a monitor that I got from the dump here, and we were able to tape off on the monitor the parameters. So we always were able to check and see, okay, this is in the shot and this isn't. You know what I mean? So that we didn't end up with things that were cut off. We were the right framing. So I would say that that our image here is probably 16:9. Does anyone know?
It would be 16:9.
Yeah,
yeah,
which is a length of 16 versus 9. It's the width to the height of the frame. In the old days in film, it was 4:3.
4:3, yeah.
Millimeter film. So it was much fatter and not as wide. Okay, the other thing to keep in mind when shooting, what we would do is just shoot a little test. So we've got the artwork, we got the lights on, the focus is set, and then what's the f-stop going to be? Because I've got it on manual exposure. So what I do is stick underneath the camera these lovely little, oh, here we go. F2.8, that's the smallest, I mean, it's basically the widest parameters, the biggest number. And then all the way down to F16, we're checking out, taking a couple of frames at each different f-stop. So I'll do a frame at 2.8, a frame at f4, all the way up to f16. And then afterwards, look at that few seconds of film and pick out which frame is the right exposure, and that'll be the exposure for that scene. Simple, but really, so you call that bracketing, a simple process, but really saves a lot because then you know you're getting a good exposure. Okay, so the movement of the artwork. I think I can't wait to look at that video that Curtis mentioned, the Alan Becker video link.
I posted that in the Facebook chat as well, if people are interested in checking that out. Yeah.
So if let's say that I've got a really wide frame, which is generally what I was shooting, was probably about 1.5 feet across by whatever, 10 inches wide and 16 inches long. And so in that movement, if I've got, depending on the size of the field and the speed that I want of the object, let's say it's a ball rolling from one side to the other. If it's a tiny little ball, it'll take longer. If it's a big ball, it'll take shorter amount of time. but also what is the intent? So for example, I was working with this wonderful assistant and her name is Saskia. And she was, she did one of the first scenes that she shot was an airplane in the sky. And she had clouds that were going left to right and clouds that were going right to left. And as the airplane is going by. And I had to say, no, the clouds are only going to go in one direction unless there's something there that motivates them to go in a different direction, like a big swirl of wind that upsets the airplane. Oh yeah. So we were both constantly discovering this kind of stuff, the logic of the object that we're shooting. And every single object has a character, and you have to figure out what that character is and be true to that character in the way that you move it. Does that make sense? Any questions on that?
Yeah, totally. I think so. And are you, I guess, one thing I'm curious about is like, how much are you, how much of a vision of what objects you're going to use do you have in advance, and how much of it is like discovering it while you're making the film, basically?
Well, like Curtis, I spent a lot of time. I spend time with the script. My script ends up having 3 columns usually: narration, image, and then something notes about how it's going to move. Or
interesting.
So, and that keeps shuffling around. Structure is really important. I thought it was interesting. The screenplay book that Curtis showed, because really it is the fundamentals of telling a story. So that framework is definitely really important to me. And I would tell Saskia, I'm just going to go and sit with the script for 20 minutes. And she always laughed, because it was always 2 hours or 3 hours before the next version would be ready, because that's how much time it takes to restructure the script. Then within the actual scene, yeah, something magic might happen, but you have the parameters of this is the message that scene is getting out there.
That's a really interesting way of scripting something out. That I think seems like a really like useful way to plan for something like this.
Yeah, I'll just somewhere here I've got the script, and I can show you.
Oh, cool.
What it looks like. But yeah, I'll get to that. Oh, here it is. I'm sorry. No, I think I recycled them all.
Fair enough.
But I can send a copy of the script if anyone's
sure.
interested. Yeah, okay. I'll send it to Devin and he can put it in that box.
Yeah.
Okay. And then also further to what Curtis was saying, what we did was, if we needed a second of film, we only shot 12 frames. And no, we didn't. We shot what felt natural. And so, I don't know, when we imported the material into the edit program, that's when we would indicate to the editing program, which was in this case, Premiere Pro, that it was to repeat every frame twice. So in the past, when I was shooting differently, shooting on film, for example, I would shoot each image 2 times. But this way, you save that extra little bit of time by shooting each image once and reproducing it twice in the edit program. These kinds of things, I think all of you guys will know because you're younger, but to find out how do I make my edit program repeat twice each image is a simple Google search, and somebody who knows everything in the world will have posted about how to do that. And that's been a real revelation to me, because it used to be, we didn't used to have a university online like we do now. So we're getting, oh yeah, we got lots of time. Okay. Yeah, I guess too, the other thing is that don't worry about making mistakes. If, for example, as frequently happens, you're moving the object into the frame and your hand gets caught in the image and you've caught your hand putting the opera singer on the balcony. Oh, so that's easy. You can cut it out when you put your shot together. You're basically making hundreds or thousands of still images, the way that I shoot. And then afterwards, you're importing all of those images into an edit program, well, into folders. And in the folders themselves, you can cut out those images that are mistakes, or you can wait until you're in the edit program. The document that I think I've shared about edit, okay, we're still talking about shooting.
Well, would you like me to move on to exporting? This one here?
Yeah, exporting, editing.
Yeah.
So this is another document. This is one that I put together when I was at NIFCO, and I for Foretold. And then when we were doing the more recent film, I found a much easier way to import the images. So basically, on your DSLR camera is a small little card drive. And when you put that into the card reader, in this case, I've got an ancient MacBook Pro. So I just stick it in the side of it. And instead of opening the pictures folder or photo folder, I just basically had all these other folders set up with their scene number as described in this document. But instead of them downloading into photos, I would just drag them from that little, the card into the folders. Is that making sense?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. All right. And then from those folders, then they're easily imported into the edit program. And in the edit program, what you have to do is, because they're all individual photographs, you have to nest them together. And there's a nesting element that basically links them all as one complete shot, as opposed to individual little images. And the way that scenes are divided up, as Curtis was talking about, any time that there's a major change of location or time, it's a new scene. So in the images that we just watched, for example, all of the sand animation at the beginning of Foretold, we had sand blowing, we had sand creating a pyramid. That was the sand blowing is scene 1. Scene 2 is pyramid. Scene 3 is Sphinx. Scene 4 is the snake, and then scene 5 would be the next scene that comes after that. So all of those little folders, you're able to drag them onto your timeline that you're editing. I mean, they become scenes that you're dragging onto your timeline and editing together. Any questions about this?
Well, maybe not so much about this specifically, but just seeing the picture. And if I'm getting ahead of you, just feel free to tell me. But how are you? You have your script. These images that you're finding. Where are you sourcing them from? These.
Oh,
yeah.
Very good question.
Yeah. Yeah. Where's that come from?
This came from the internet.
Lovely.
An image file. However, we got in a lot of trouble because we were like with the last film that we did, and maybe you've already posted it, haven't you? So it was for CBC. CBC put out this call for filmmakers all across the country for proposals about the pandemic. So they had 8,000 proposals, and mine was the only one that was the virus's point of view, an animated film. So that's how King COVID got made. So, but because it was for a commercial distributor, everything that, we were talking about accessing free online music. And, it's okay for me or Angie or Curtis to do a film with music you find online, as long as it's not got a commercial or broadcast window afterwards. So that's why we got in trouble, was because we were using, for example, images that we thought were cleared, but they were only cleared for non-commercial use. So then we had to be really careful and go through and pull out some of the images that we had and put in other ones. And so we were able to find stuff that was public domain, you know, an image that was an old etching from the Middle Ages during the Black Plague, or another etching from the Black Plague. But then other stuff that was modern or, you know, had authorship issues, we had to always get rid of. And several times what we found was, for example, we wanted to reproduce one of the things that Saskia and I found both extremely moving, was that people came together during this pandemic. This is exactly what we need coming out of the pandemic, is for a community of people who are going to change the way that we're destroying the earth and bring us back into a sensible way of living. So we were just overwhelmed by the visuals of people playing music from their balconies. So who do we use for the balcony singer? And she had some image that wasn't something that we could use. And so we just sent her outside, and Saskia put on all of my dress up clothes, and she became the opera singer, shot against the tent that I had set up in the backyard as our exterior studio for the summertime. Anyway, and so we just cut out around her and put her in that balcony, and that became our opera singer in the balcony scene that's at the end of that film.
And that creates that's like some depth you're creating there as well, you know, because you have these images layering on top of each other.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It gives it a more of a three-dimensionality. But then we were also kind of reduced to who could we use for, you know, the lungs getting infected. So guess who ended up with infected lungs was me.
I noticed that one. I thought it was an interesting choice, but that makes a lot of sense now.
And then we had, you know, kind of a transition shot, again, like structurally in the filmmaking, to be able to have a breather in all of this more intense informational stuff. So we had sequences, we had kind of like chapters, and one of the chapters we had grass blowing like this, and we wanted to have a figure, so that a person, so it wasn't just a natural image. So we got Annie, Kieran's the editor, to be that figure, and we shot about 12 pictures of her bending back and forth. This is just one of the 12. And then we animated her weaving back and forth with the blowing of the grass. So, and then we wanted to show that the DNA and RNA, the DNA, this is so much fun, and RNA, the DNA is the human building stone, and the RNA is what the virus has, and how since the beginning of our time from crawling out of the ocean, we've had a battle between the two, and that the virus takes credit for having actually made human RNA, DNA a lot stronger, because the virus has had to has made the human fight off the virus. So it makes so we had to have this arm. So we got Claire, who had built 2 greenhouses this summer, and we got her to give us her arm. So there you have it. Anyway, that's kind of what the artwork looks like, lying on that table and being animated. And usually we would shoot the scene once and figure out what was wrong with it, and then have to do a second and a third movement in order to get it working for us. Sometimes we used our first version, and we were lucky that way.
That's so interesting. Yeah, and it's also, but I think pretty approachable for people maybe who are animating things for the first time right now. Just go out there, find images, and put them together and make little stories with them. I think yeah, I love it. Anyways,
very hands-on.
Yes. Did you want me to go back to the exporting importing stills program?
No, I think if that's in your folder, then that's okay. Then let's just talk about distribution.
Sure.
Because again, it was great to hear Angie talking about having gotten her film into festivals and everything. So one of the documents that's in that share folder is this film festival information, and it's basically just everything about how to. I put it together with two other filmmakers here about how to get your films out there and why it's important to see it with an audience and to be able to read the room and figure out what's working and what's not working, and where it could have been cut differently, paced differently, structured differently, and then also all the other benefits of being involved with film festivals in terms of meeting other people, hearing about new financing possibilities, new ways to be able to keep, kick the day job and being a filmmaker. So maybe Devin, you can just put up Snake Hips Lulu.
Sure, sounds good.
And this is a 3.5 minute film. So you think what can be done with a 3.5 minute film? Where is its market? What is its possibility? Who would be interested in it? It's an extremely personal film. So where does it sit in the world? And it was actually done because, again, like I try to take advantage of every opportunity there is. There was a show that was being done at an art gallery here in Dawson, the Odd Gallery in the Oddfellows Hall. And so the subject, I even forget what the subject was supposed to be. But anyway, I put together this little film. It went over all right. So then I edited it into this 3.5 minute film. So we'll just play the first minute or so and I'll talk after that.
Like a lot of Canadians, I knew nothing about the Yukon. I didn't even know where it was. But the first time I set foot in Dawson City, I felt like I was home again. During the heady days of the Dawson City Gold Rush, there was a dance hall girl they called Snake Hips Lulu. Could this have been me in a former life? In this incarnation, I came of age during the reign of the hippies.
I'll just talk now.
True to that spirit of...
And you can keep playing if you want, but just with the volume down. Yeah, so it actually, the theme of this was supposed to be about selfies and the era of selfies that we're living in. So that's why I put together this a film about images of my past and my future and everything. And that film went to so many, like I found festivals that were sometimes free festivals and other ones that were not free but didn't charge too much, and all around the world. And it ended up in so many festivals. And here in the Yukon, there are possibilities of getting funding for travel to festivals. So I ended up being able to travel to a festival in Istanbul in March, and then in August I was off on this across the world trip, which included Zimbabwe, started in Zimbabwe to Australia, back to the Maritimes in Canada, across to England for a Women Over 50 film festival, back to the Newfoundland Women's Film Festival, PEI, etc. in the East Atlantic Film Festival. And didn't even get to all the festivals it was in, but it was a huge year, all out of a little 3.5 minute film that had humor in it, and it also pacing wise. And I liked seeing your, character arc, story arc there, Curtis, again, because that's what so much of it is about, is being able to tell the story that starts with a good humor, has some pathos, brings people on an emotional journey, and has a satisfying resolution where you have this woman saying, like, yes, I had a lot of lovers. Maybe that's why I needed a hip replacement, because after all, you can't always be on top, whatever the line is at the end. Anyway, so it was an example, I guess, of we're so self-deprecating often, and it is detrimental to us being able to get our work out there. But once you've got it made, distribute it, because the other thing is that CBC has got a window for short films. It's I think very competitive. It's called Canadian Reflections, and ever since the 80s they've had this program, Canadian Reflections, but it's it pays, and your film is on CBC. There used to be a whole pile of other possibilities. So many broadcasters across the country, Knowledge Network, TVO, used to have their little short film programs. The only one I know of now is that Canadian Reflections. But again, it's a place to get your film programmed and get paid for it, and have that kudo of having your film on national television. I think maybe it's 10 minutes left if people have any questions.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to post it in the Facebook chat. Yeah, I just want to say, first of all, thank you for chatting with us today, because I really do think, especially for a challenge like this, yeah, your work is a testament to just just how telling a personal story simply can really reach a lot of people. Yeah, so thank you so much.
Thanks, it's a pleasure. I want to make a film now.
You're welcome to.
Oh, Curtis, was that you? You had a question, Curtis?
Yeah, sorry, my screen froze for a second there. I didn't mean to interrupt. No, I just wanted to first say that I think it's fantastic, Lulu, that you're here talking about stop motion animation. I think it's a fascinating form of animation, and I also, like you mentioned, I think it's a really great sort of first step for some people who may be interested in animation. Especially, you can get stop motion software for free on your phone, even if you just want to play with it and such. But to get to my point, my question is, do you ever modify your images in the program while you're animating them? For instance, I know that After Effects has some tools, like I think they're called the pin tools, where you can, if you have one image, you can put a pin on each side, and you can kind of stretch and squash things and move them around and such. Or do you kind of just keep things more static in your work?
Yeah, good question. It depends on the film. And this last one, no, we didn't do any of that yet. The one that I did 20 years ago, The Moody Brood, yes, we did. I don't know what the program was called then, but 20 years ago, but we were doing some small modifications. I guess that I just feel like sometimes, because I'm not technically, it doesn't come to me naturally. It takes a lot of work for me to figure things out, that the easiest way is just to reshoot the animation, take that hour and a half, and redo it the way that I think might be the quirkiness that I want out of it, as opposed to spending days trying to figure something. I mean, just it's the way our minds work all so differently, right?
Yeah, and sometimes the old analog way, it's just it's get stuff done, We have a question here from Veronica. She says, photography seems like an important part of stop motion. You kind of touched on this a bit, but any more tips on taking good pictures or lighting them well, especially at home for cheap? Maybe even both in the animation process, but maybe also even you took some additional photos of your assistants and things like that for the last film. Any tips on lighting or making the pictures look good?
Well, good question. I mean, certainly being able to have, some kind of lights that are professional, wherever you can beg, borrow, or steal them, is an important factor. I'm just going to see if I can find a photograph of our setup for when we were doing King COVID, because it's pretty simple. And like the basic things of focusing and getting the right exposure. I also, you know, in the same way that what Curtis was doing was showing fragments of something flying through the screen, the dust particles and everything, that gives that dimensionality to something. So if your image is looking too stark, like you're the director, you're looking through the camera, you're looking on the monitor, you're seeing what the camera is seeing. If it doesn't look right, ooh, how can you make it more interesting? So, you know, sprinkling some powder across the screen or across the artwork, or diffusion is really important for me. Sometimes it's just too stark, and so then you might want to either put a colored gel over the lens of the camera so that now you're looking at it all through a yellow ochre gel or something, or you know, like putting a veil or something. I used to work with a camera operator who would find himself in the hosiery department of stores, women's clothing stores, holding up his hand through the hose to see how much diffusion that particular nylon provided. And same way with me, it's like, how can I make this less direct an image? So I'll lay a piece of sheer veil over the top and then have the animation happening underneath. Sometimes mounted a clear sheet of glass on mounted it above the artwork so that the artwork underneath we could be pulling it through or moving it through.
Oh, cool.
And have something on an upper level.
Are you trying, when you're shooting kind of the top down, you know, collage style, as I've been calling it, animation? Are you typically just trying to go for something very even, just kind of like a nice even lighting across it, or are you playing around with different lighting styles, different effects to kind of make it more dramatic or comedic or something like that?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, all the time it's a matter of adjusting. So you're right, you know, if a camera, if the object has got some three-dimensionality to it, but it's looking really flat, if you lower your light and then give it some shadow, then that'll make it stronger.
Cool. Sounds like experimentation, always the key, playing around. Yeah.
Remembering that you're the boss, not the image, and so you can make it look better.
I love that. You're the boss, not the image. That is actually that's a very, very useful takeaway for filmmaking.
That's good for any kind of filmmaking.
Yes, yeah. Oh my god. I think there's just one more question here, and it's just if there's anywhere. Oh, here we go. This is setup.
There's a little image from our shooting setup. This is the main camera we used. So we had our DSLR camera on the top. We had a light just underneath it. Then we had the two lights on the side. And then that box that we're looking at is actually a fiberglass on the top and two lights inside it. So yes, we did rent like 5 lights.
Amazing.
But it can be as simple as just 2 study lamps. It really can.
That's so cool. And is that just like a normal tripod or that you've just angled down basically?
Well, yeah, it's a tripod that had an arm that came out. It was the best one that they had at Kayak, the Klondike Institute of Art and Culture. But again, it could have been the one that I have kicking around here, stuck up on boxes to make it high enough and, you know, taped into position. It doesn't need to be complex.
Amazing.
Right. Someone in the chat was debating how to use a tripod and they eventually put it on top of books so that there was enough space so that you could zoom in.
Exactly.
Yeah, do whatever.
Whatever works. Yeah, Charles says it's like a light table. Yeah, exactly, right? It's like that was how you set up there, right? A light table.
It's not a question for you, Lulu, but I was just at the beginning of your presentation, I was thinking, like, just looking at your style, I was struck by how much it reminded me of Helen Hill's work. So it was cool to see your footage over there. I'm from Halifax originally. I knew her and Paul, so just putting that out there. That was very nice to see, and just the familiar style there for sure reminded me of hers.
Yeah, absolutely. And Helen Hill did. She was an animator, for those of you who don't know her name, and died prematurely in her 30s. Anyway, she did a handbook for animation with of this style of animation. I don't know where you can get it anymore, but yeah, she was amazing. Yeah, thanks, Sandy.
That's a lovely comment. Thank you, Sandy.
Oh, thank you.
I think just the last question from here for you, Lulu, is was it? Oh, actually, no, we got Ruth Lawrence coming in. Ruth Lawrence with a question. I'm going to save Shan's question for last. But Ruth says, "Hi, Lulu. I want to do a simple stop motion 30-second animation with paper dolls. For a first timer, would you think that's a day's work or a weekend or more? I guess it's over 300 photos, but I do it all on the same background."
Yeah, well, I would say hi, Ruth, and I would say definitely give yourself as much time as you can, and because you don't know what problems you're going to run into. If it's like, for example, it's sounding like if you have 300 different images, or is it 300? I don't know exactly what you're talking about, but anyway, give yourself enough time. With often it takes a long time just to set it up and to make it all the elements working, the lights, the camera, the tripod, a monitor if you have it, though you don't need it. And then when you do consider that you're probably going to shoot it once, twice, or 3 times, beginning to end, so that it's that much time. So don't let yourself get squeezed. And then in the editing, of course, you should anticipate that there will be some problems, because usually there are. It's not your fault. It doesn't help if you throw the computer away. It's really got to be resolved and give yourself enough time to deal with it.
It sounds like weekend maybe, because if you need that time, good, and if not,
I would say preliminary shoot is 1 weekend rather, and then come back to it when you're fresh to do the finals later, or to do the editing later, or whatever.
Ruth's added a bit more context here. She says she's planning on 12 images per second and about a 30-second clip is what I was calculating. So that was, I think, the 200 photo comment, but still, I think time's good.
Lulu, where do you find the patience to do animation? I think this is a good question for any animator, really. But
yeah.
Where does it come from for you?
The sheer joy of being able to make inanimate objects come alive, and it's such a pure creativity. I've been working on feature film screenplays forever. Only ever made 2. I mean, I should be thankful. But in a career of 40 years, to put all that energy into stuff that doesn't happen, whereas with animation, you make it happen, and you have a result to show for your work. It's really, really just such a joyful process.
Is it also really satisfying because as an animator, you have quite a lot of control over, like you're dominating these images. As a director of animation, I guess you would have, I don't know, it would be quite an inverted process for creating, but as an animator, I don't know.
Yeah, usually it's just one of us doing all the work. I mean, often on the lower budget things. So yeah, you don't have to be trying to communicate your creative vision. You're the creative vision. But no, to me, it's not about, to spend a week doing the shooting for a 20-minute animation is not a lot. A week of setup, a week for the actual work, a few weeks in the editing, it's nothing compared to spending years trying to get financing even for a short drama.
Yeah.
And then having to get everyone on the same page creatively.
I think it's a really a great note to end on, because especially going into this challenge, because I think that it is unique in that way that you can exert a lot of control. It's a lot of work and it's hard, but you can exert a lot of control on it. And as we've seen by, I think all 3 presenters today, such unique and very different styles across the board. So it can be interpreted so many ways. Before we go though, Shan did ask if there's any place you would send people if they wanted to see more of your work, Lulu.
Oh, Thanks. Email me and I can send you. I have links to my Vimeo site.
Yeah.
So my email is luluakeating@gmail.com.
Perfect.
I'll put it in this comments thing.
Oh, lovely. Thank you so much. Okay. And if you don't mind, do you mind if I post it on the Facebook page?
Oh, please. Go ahead. Yeah. And the links.
All right.
Too. Yeah, put the links on there too.
Sure. Yeah, I can do that after we pull up. All right. Well, with that, unless everyone good? Everyone.
Anybody wants any of the other presenters want to throw out any address or something?
There was some plugs to Angie, your RSVP ASAP 2, right?
1. Or underscore on Instagram.
Okay, great. And you can check out some of her work there. And Curtis, of course, at Stellarboard. Yep.
Stellarboard.com. Yeah, I have my social medias linked there as well as my email, so people can get a hold of me if they have any questions or whatever it may be.
Amazing. Well, I want to thank you all so much for sharing your knowledge and your time with us today. This was so delightful. I loved the variety. I loved all the different approaches, and I'm super excited to see how it impacts the results of the Nickel Short Animation Challenge, which, if you have not signed up for, you should go to our Facebook page and find information about it there, because it's still going all month. And as Angie has proven, you really only need 2 days.
Yeah, there's lots of time. So much time.
So much time. So so thank you all, and have a lovely day.
Thanks, Devin.
Bye.
Thank you.